wait for the cable. Okay, we're ready to roll. I'll call the Londonderry Planning Board meeting to order for April 13th, 2011. I just want to point out for everyone here, if we have an emergency, we need to evacuate. This room has 2 exits. On the right-hand side of the audience, front and back of the room. If we do need to evacuate, you ask you to proceed through the exit closest to you, carefully and expeditiously go outside and move away from the building. Don't come back into our file. Officials have instructed everyone to do so. I'd like to ask everyone to please rise and pledge allegiance to the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mary is absent. She's away in Washington, D.C. with 8th graders, so I'll appoint Dana to vote for Mary. And Chris is away overseas on business, and I'll appoint Scott to vote for Chris. So we've got 8 voting members, and the ex officio, John Alferrier, is absent at the moment anyway. So if he comes, we'll have 9 voting members. We have a quorum, and we can proceed. Our meeting's divided into 2 parts. The first part, we have administrative board work, and the second part, this being the second Wednesday of the month, we have our public hearings, workshops, and conceptual discussions. And we'll proceed to our administrative board work. First item, we have a governmental land use request, New Hampshire DOT wireless antenna co-location. This is a 15 Independence Drive. And Tim, you got the details on this?
Chairman, members of the board. In your packet, you'll find a letter from Peter Cook from Skyline Property Advisors on behalf of the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. They are looking at co-locating some antenna on an existing wireless communication facility located at 15 Independence Drive. The tax map I have up on the screen shows you exactly where this lot is located. Exit 5, I-93 located here, Route 28, Liberty Drive, and then Independence Drive here. The last picture is actually an aerial photo of the site where you can see the tower is actually in this location here. They're proposing 2 panel antennas and 2 microwave dishes. This does fall under the auspices of RSA 674-54 governmental land uses. The planning board does have the option of requesting a public hearing under which the planning board could review a project in accordance with the normally applicable regulations. Or if the board so chooses, you can opt not to hold a public hearing, and the state would be able to commence their construction at any point moving forward. Based on the limited nature of the application, and given the fact that in this type of application, there's actually an administrative review already for co-locating existing antenna onto an existing wireless communication facility, these types of applications typically don't come to the planning board anyway. We would still review this to make sure it meets all the health, safety, and engineering requirements to make sure it's properly installed. But my recommendation is that the board would not need to hold a public hearing on this particular request.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think
I would too.
I agree.
Yeah.
the board agree with, okay.
You need a motion to that?
No, consensus is fine.
Anyone object? Andre?
Just a quick question. Just go over what exactly they're going to be doing
Sure.
with regard to that.
Let me get the screen back up here. Oops. Excuse me for a second.
Was it the, I think it's 3rd paragraph down, Tim?
They're proposing 2 canopy access point antennas at a height of 140 feet on the existing 150-foot tower. Each of these is approximately 13.25 inches by 8.25 inches by a little more than 4.25 inches. Additionally, there's 2 2-foot microwave dishes, also at a height of 140 feet. These would be connected to the tower by an Ethernet cable to the radio equipment adjacent. This is for them to initiate the project to deploy their advanced traffic management system on the southern section of Route 93.
Just wanted to go over that because I know this is consistent with the I-93 widening project, which they were going to implement aspects of the transportation advancement system, but I know they're going to be starting with this.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Okay, So we're all set on that. That will be handled administratively by town staff. Okay, next item, we have discussions with town staff. I'll go to Andre first.
Two quick items. I know at the last meeting, I updated the board on the fact that we resubmitted a application to the Economic Development Administration for the pump station sewer pump station aspect of the Pettingill Road project. We still have not heard back from the EDA yet with regard to the status of our application, so I don't know if no news is good news, but it's in there, and we feel it's a solid application, and hopefully, we'll hear some positive results of that. The district director, our regional director, Willie Taylor, is going to be visiting New Hampshire later on this month. One of the projects that he's very interested in seeing is the Pettingill Road project. So hopefully we'll have news then with regard to our application. If it's positive, then we'll have a great conversation out there at Pettingill Road. If it's negative, then we're going to have a very interesting conversation out there on Pettingill Road. So
What to do next?
And also, I had the opportunity to attend the American Planners Association conference, which was down in Boston. Primary reason why I went to the conference is that they had a mobile workshop down in the Cape that viewed the town of Sandwich, the town of Falmouth, and Mashpee, and the town of Mashpee and Mashpee Commons. So I'm not prepared tonight to go over that, but at our next meeting, I have a bunch of pictures, and also Tom Fadula, who's the town planner, and the developer, a gentleman named Douglas Storrs, brought us through Mashpee Commons, answered all of our questions with regard to the layout and everything that went into that, and so I have, and he supplied us with a packet of information with regard to how it's, the genesis of the Mashpee Commons and what's taken place over the last 24 years with regard to Mashpee Commons, and for the most part, people seem very pleased with it. But I have a bunch of pictures I've taken with regard to every aspect of the plan, and at our next meeting, I'll be prepared to go through it if the board wishes.
Give us a presentation. It'll be May 11th, our second meeting.
Okay, and that's what I'll do.
And, excuse me, may I
Yes,
ask a question? Could I ask, too, that you include in your report a vision of what it was prior to Mashpee Commons? In other words, what impediments were there? Was it just plain open land?
Actually, it was a shopping center.
Okay.
It was a shopping center, and I believe I have that information. If I don't, I'll give Tom Fadula a call and see if I can get that information. But I think that was in the packet.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's all I have.
Okay, anything, John?
Nothing.
No? Tim?
Just wanted to share with the board, I got an email from Lynn the other day asking about how the planning board agendas get established, and I thought it would just be good to reference to the planning board how we establish our agendas from a meeting-to-meeting basis. Generally speaking, the first meeting of the month is for new applications. We place items on the agenda in the order they're submitted to the department, first come, first served. In the case of the second meeting of the month, it's really generally based on whatever actions the planning board has taken in previous months. So using tonight's agenda for an example, the first project on the agenda is the wireless communication facility for OmniPoint, which has been continued several times from the planning board dating back to last year. Therefore, that was placed first on the agenda.
I think initially it was on, I think it was either November or December.
And the second was the continuance of the lot line adjustment for waste management in Chinburg, which was continued without a public hearing and an application acceptance by letter. So therefore, that came second. Thirdly, at the March 2nd meeting, there was the public hearing and acceptance for the subdivision for Chinburg. That was then continued by the board on March 2nd, so therefore that ends up third. Fourth is the conceptual discussion for the elderly housing project off of Route 102, which was on the agenda for March 9th and was continued by the request of the applicant prior to the meeting. That's why that ends up fourth. And lastly, the Woodmont conceptual discussion was held on that same March 9th meeting, and following the conclusion of that, the board directed us to add it to the agenda for tonight, so therefore that is why it's last.
Yeah, it's always been first come, first served, so.
And as I mentioned to Lynn, it's always the prerogative of the chair, if you so see fit during the meeting, to change the agenda order around. But ultimately, that's how the staff determines the agenda for each planning board meeting. I just thought it would be good for the board to understand the reasoning and the rationale behind why the agendas look the way they do.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
That's all I had for tonight.
Okay, anything from the board? Seeing none, I just want to note in the Monday's Union Leader, the business section, there was a thing on smart growth. Not much big detail, but if you went and looked at the web pages they had, there's some interesting stuff. Add to our body of knowledge about smart growth encompasses quite a wide area anyway. So, okay, we'll get into our public hearings, workshops, and conceptual discussions. We have 3 public hearings. We'll have them, and then we have a conceptual discussion of 3-lot subdivision for 94-unit elderly, and then we have Woodmont. And the Woodmont part, we're going to take in sections. We're going to hear from the developer on what has transpired in the last month, questions and answers on that. And Jack Felvey, I don't see him, said he was going to be here because he wanted to speak. I'm going to take Jack Felvey after we got through that part of it, and then questions and answers. And I think we have quite a bit of sifting the wheat from the chaff on that. I don't think it all depends upon how much time that we've got.
Mention about the microphones.
Okay, microphones also. There's no central microphone because it's an on-off. So my working microphones are here, and the 2 in front of us, and then John and Tim and Andre and Libby. So we'll mix and match as needed. So we need the microphones because people at home can't hear us without a microphone. Okay, so we'll proceed with Beal Revocable Trust, Omnipoint Communications. This is tax map number 12, lot number 34. This is a continued application acceptance and a public hearing for a site plan and a conditional use permit to construct a 146-foot wireless communication facility and associated accessory equipment and structures. And what we have to do first is determine the application as complete. Once it's complete, then we proceed with the public hearing, and that starts a 65-day time period in which the planning board has to render a decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. There are 2 outstanding checklist items, both of which have associated waivers. Assuming the planning board grants those waivers, staff would recommend that the application be accepted as complete. The first of those is that the applicant is requesting a waiver to sections 314 and 417. They have not provided a traffic impact analysis as required by the regulations. Staff recommends granting the waiver as the only associated traffic impact for the project is a monthly maintenance visit by technicians. The second waiver for acceptance purposes is to sections 313 and 416. They have not provided an illumination plan. Again, we recommend granting the waiver as no new ground lighting is proposed as part of the proposed project. Again, assuming those 2 waivers are acceptable to the board, we'd recommend the application be accepted as complete.
Okay, any board have any questions on those 2 waivers? If not, I'll accept a motion that we grant those waivers based upon the recommendation of staff and also the letter from...
October 10th, or October 21st, 2010 letter.
Yeah.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Motion by Dana, second by Rick. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Abstentions, chair votes affirmative. And the motion carries that those 2 waivers have been granted, and we can proceed to the...
Now you need a
Mr.
motion to
Chairman?
accept.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the application as complete.
Second.
I have a motion by Dana for completeness of the application, second by Rick. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Abstentions, chair votes affirmative. And the application has been accepted as complete. And just identify yourself for our records, and we can proceed with the hearing.
Good evening. My name is Steve Grill. I am an attorney with Divine Millimet in Manchester, New Hampshire. I represent the applicant, T-Mobile, formerly known as OmniPoint. And with me tonight is Kevin Thatcher from Clough Harbor, the engineers on the project, and also Peter Fowles from C. Davis, who is a site specialist working with us on the project. And hopefully between the 3 of us, we can address any questions or concerns that the board may have. Just by way of overview, as I think Planner Thompson stated, this is a proposed 146-foot tall telecommunications antenna tower. It would be built disguised as an artificial pine tree, what we call a monopine, meaning it's a monopole, a single steel pole with the cables inside. and above the tree line would be artificial branches, as you're seeing up on the screen now, so that the antennas themselves would be concealed within the artificial branches, which are made of fiberglass primarily and other substances like that. The parcel itself is 13 acres, and if we could go back to, I think it's sheet 3, that one there. So Kelly Road ends right now, the Class 5 portion, in a cul-de-sac, and then it continues as a very undeveloped Class 6 road beyond that portion. This matter was before the Londonderry Planning Board in 2006, and they granted a variance for this facility.
You mean zoning board of adjustment?
The zoning board of adjustment.
Yes.
Excuse me, what did I say?
Planning
Yeah,
board.
planning board.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, big
It's been a
difference.
long day. Yeah, I'm sorry. The ZBA granted a variance, but one of the conditions of approval of that variance was that instead of coming on the existing drive, which is off the cul-de-sac portion, the Class 5 portion, they required that we use the Class 6 portion for the distance shown, and then build a new access drive on the property up to the tower site. It's quite hilly, and you can see in a couple of places there's some significant grade. So because the ZBA granted the variance with that condition, the engineers redesigned the project, and I got involved in the beginning of 2010, and since that time we've been working closely with staff to address a number of issues, primarily about the improvements to the Class 6 portion of Kelly Road, some drainage issues both on the property and along Kelly Road, and things of that nature. I believe, obviously we haven't seen the engineer's report yet, but I believe we've addressed all of the issues that town staff raised during the past year with respect to those issues. There are also, because we're putting in some drainage improvements, there's a couple of places, the last curve up on the left side of the plan is a drainage improvement which encroaches on a wetlands buffer, so we need a conditional use permit for that, and we've gone before the Conservation Commission, which unanimously recommended approval of the conditional use permit. They had no issues. We're not disturbing any wetlands. We're simply, there will be a minimal amount of construction activity within the buffer. So that's the overview, and I think folks may know that this, after the ZBA granted the variance in 2006, the case went to court. Ultimately, the New Hampshire Supreme Court upheld the ZBA's decision, and the reason I bring that up is because it's been a long road for T-Mobile, a very, very expensive road and time-consuming road, and I think it points out the importance of this project. This tower, when built, will serve an area that presently does not have adequate wireless service, not only for T-Mobile, but it has the ability for other carriers to co-locate on the facility. My understanding of where we are procedurally is that the ZBA approval is for the use, it's for the height, and it's for the specific location, not only of the tower, but also for the access. So I think we're here really on pretty traditional planning board type of stuff, the engineering of the road and the drainage issues, and obviously whatever else the board is concerned about. But that's my understanding of where we are, because those other issues have now been resolved as a result of the ZBA action and the court case.
Yeah, and that's not in our domain anyway.
Right.
It's strictly a site plan, and that's
Right.
pretty much
So-
established by our regs.
So that's the overview. Sheet 5 it shows some of the drainage improvements which were significant, and I'm going to forget some of the sheet numbers, but we show also the road improvements. I want to mention that from T-Mobile's perspective, the improvements that we're doing to the road are extraordinary for this type of a project. As I think Planner Thompson mentioned, this site, once it's constructed, will be visited on a routine basis once a month by each carrier that locates on it. Obviously, if there's some kind of emergency, it might get visited more often, but that's a minimal amount of use, and normally we would use the minimal amount of road that we could get away with, but staff was pretty insistent that we make some very significant improvements, which we've agreed to do in order to address those concerns. So there's going to be some paving, some significant grading of the Class 6 portion of Kelly Road. We're going to widen it without disturbing the existing stone walls, except for some construction, and they'll be repaired. Those are the main features. I mean, I could go through a lot of detail, but I think it may be more useful to have folks ask questions, whatever the board's pleasure
Okay,
is.
we'll do staff, we'll go to the board, and then the public on this. So, John?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll go through the application review items. Item number 1, the applicant is requesting a waiver to section 418D. Applicant has not provided a meets and bounds description of the easement area of the wireless communication facility as required by the regulations. The applicant indicates in their waiver request letter that no easements are proposed, but one appears on the plan. Staff recommends denial of the waiver if an easement is proposed. If no easement is proposed and the wireless communication facility is governed by the lease agreement, the plan should be updated to reflect this, and a note added to the plan referencing the lease agreement accordingly. Item 2, applicant is requesting a waiver to section 304 and 418. Applicant does not provide all applicable utility clearance letters as required by the regulation. Again, staff recommends denial of the waiver. The applicant has provided a utility clearance letter from PSNH, and there's no justifiable reason. We can see that the clearance letter from Fairpoint for phone service cannot be provided, as has been the case with every site plan and subdivision submitted for planning board approval in Londonderry, including these wireless facilities. Item number 3, applicant shall obtain all necessary permits, including FAA permits, indicate the approval number on the cover sheet, and provide copies for the planning department's file. Item 4, the revised design for the proposed driveway and off-site roadway improvements to the Class 6 portion of Kelly Road was submitted with this submission. We're requesting that they clarify or address the following relative to the plans provided. Item A, the revised grading design and cross-sections indicate proposed driveway construction along the Class 6 portion of Kelly Road will impact the existing stone walls, but the plans do not address the impacts or reconstruction as typically requested by the town. We understand the Heritage Commission is responsible for reviewing and providing recommendations for stone walls impacts to the planning board in accordance with section 309 of the subdivision regs. Recommend the applicant discuss the proposed stone wall impacts with the commission and obtain recommendations. In addition, we recommend the wall reconstruction be in accordance with the details under section 309 of the regs. Item B, we're requesting that they provide labels for the proposed contours shown on the plans, especially sheet 5 of the erosion control plan. Item C, proposed design includes private drainage improvements and construction of a detention basin. The drainage easement shall be provided for the basin that includes maintenance responsibility and schedule for the drainage system as typically requested. Item D, proposed utility service is shown with this submission and is located upon lot 34 and outside of the right-of-way. We're requesting that they provide documentation that the owner of lot 34 has agreed to the additional site impact shown in this latest design, and revise the proposed tree line to address the indicated utility service and update the drainage report accordingly. Item E is to provide turf establishment notes on the erosion control plan. Item F, provide dimensions for the proposed riprap apron shown in the weir structures for proper construction. Item G, indicate the proposed underdrains and drainage system on the roadway plan and profile sheet 14 provided with a submission. Item 5, the existing right-of-way along Kelly Road is less than 25 feet from the existing pavement center line and the unimproved portion of Kelly Road along the front lot frontage to the proposed driveway. Town typically requests roadway maintenance easement to be provided a minimum of 25 feet from the existing pavement center line for future widening of the roadway. It appears a slope easements may also be necessary along the newer paved portion of the roadway. The applicant shall arrange a meeting with the DPW to discuss this issue. Item 6, recommend the applicant address the following relative to the drainage report. Item A, update the revised project drainage report to include a summary table, including impacts to each abutter, both pre and post development in accordance with the regulations. Item B, update post-development subcatchment 3B to indicate grass at the proposed detention basin and verify compliance with the regulations. Again, no increase in runoff. Item C, the ledge indicated in the pre-development subcatchment 3 is not indicated in the post-development subcatchment as would be anticipated. We're requesting that they clarify and update to be consistent with the existing conditions. Item D, Kelly Road Detention Basin analysis indicates storage below the outlet invert of 402.5, which is typically not allowed. We're requesting that they update the analysis to exclude any volume below the outlet invert. In addition, to verify the 12 inches of freeboard above the 50-year elevation is maintained. Item 7 is provide the owner's signature on the application, title sheet, and plans, site plan, and partial site plan sheets. Item 8, we're recommending the applicant verify if additional off-site improvements to Kelly Road will be necessary under the application with the DPW. There are 2 board action items. The applicant is, again, requesting 8 waivers, which we briefly went through in the beginning. In item 2, the applicant is proposing improvements within the CO district that will require a conditional use permit approved by the planning board. Board will need to consider the CUP approval as part of the project review. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
Getting back to the waivers, as John mentioned, there were 8 waivers requested. However, 3 of those waivers are no longer applicable, those being for the building renderings, boundary survey, and for project permits for the purposes of acceptance. We do have elevations of the facility and accessory structures that meets that requirement, and permits in hand are no longer a requirement for acceptance following the revisions to our regulations in 2009. The loan waiver that John did not address is listed as item 5 in the staff recommendations. They're requesting a waiver to section 205 in Exhibit 3. The applicant is requesting that the town refund a portion of the application fee that has already been paid for the project. Staff is recommending denial of this waiver as there's no precedent for the board to grant a refund for an application fee already paid for an application, and doing so would set a dangerous precedent for future applications. Conditional use permit, staff is recommending granting the conditional use permit based on the recommendations of the Conservation Commission. As John mentioned, we are also recommending conditional approval tonight with the notice of decision to read as per the staff recommendations. One note, 2 notes actually that are non-standard to the typical report. The first is item 2 on the list, which should only be added if the waiver to section 418D is deemed not applicable and the easement is not proposed. That would be to add the note to the plan referencing the lease agreement. And item 2 is to provide that utility clearance letter from Fairpoint for the phone service to the facility. Outside of that, I have no further comments.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Anything, Andre?
No, I have no further questions.
Okay, I'll start this into the board on my right with Scott.
I need a minute, actually. I'm still checking, so skip me for right
Oh,
now.
okay. Rick?
I'm all set.
Okay, Tom?
Can I ask, it appears from the map and the drawings here that there's going to be an 8-foot high fence around the perimeter, is that correct?
Of the compound itself, not
Right.
the property, right, that's correct.
So that's, and it won't be camouflaged or anything, it will just appear as the fence, and there's barbed wire supposedly on top of it?
Yeah, and that's a standard security precaution, but we are showing, I believe, planting of evergreens around on the outside of the fence. So that'll be the camouflage for the fenced area.
Thank you, that's all I had.
What type of evergreen?
I don't know that we've, gotten into that level of detail. Is it on the plan? Kevin, you want to come up and join me up
Yeah,
here?
you can come down here. Just your,
That's Kevin Thatcher.
okay.
It is indicated on the plan, I believe their arborvitae should be one of the notes on this.
Here they are.
Yep.
Arborvitaes.
Okay.
I'm all set,
You all set?
thanks.
Dana?
Question maybe for John. Number 5 on the right-of-way,
Yeah.
is that for all of Kelly Road or just the unimproved portion?
Both portions of the paved portion, Dana, as well as the unimproved portion. Again, when we scale off this from the center line of where the cul-de-sac is
Mhm.
onto their property, we don't have 25 feet off center line.
So it's been that way pretty much ever since the road was put in, correct?
Correct, or to my knowledge, yep. Again, we've tried to, it's been our practice now for at least 9 years that we ask for additional.
I understand that, it's just, you know, I don't see, and I mean, if it was a through road, you know, got a lot of traffic, I would agree 100%. Okay, but considering, you know, it's a one-way in, one-way out, very low traffic, you know, I understand it, but I don't necessarily agree with it.
The main reason for justification that we have for this particular case is this does connect into a landlocked parcel that has future development potential that could run a road through here out to another roadway. And having this widening easement allows to make sure that there is sufficient right-of-way to make sure that that connection can be made properly in the future.
Okay, just looking for a real reason for it, other than just because we want to.
Yeah, and again, Dana, without, you know, we do, again, typical 50-foot right-of-way with 13 feet of right-of-way beyond the edge of pavement. It allows us for a 3-foot shoulder and any ditch lines that we need to maintain the road.
Okay, I just, you know, was looking for a little better explanation than, yeah, so.
Yep.
I'm all set.
It continues actually out behind Mountain Home Estates and comes all the way down to
Yeah.
Shasta Drive and down by the town pound and so forth. Chuck, I'm all set. All set? Then,
On Kelly Road, you may have said this, but on Kelly Road, you're paving that portion back to the gravel from the cul-de-sac back to the.
Correct. The Class 6 portion will be paved to the point where the access drive begins. And you can see the cut where the construction will end, will not be paved further south of that point.
And the width of that is 14?
I think it's 14 feet.
Which was requested by the fire department.
Okay. Okay, and will it be plowed in the wintertime? Will you be plowing
It will
that, or-
probably not be plowed. Typically, we don't plow because the access in winter is by four-wheel drive or snow machine, if necessary, snowmobile. So typically, we do not plow access roads to these
You won't be
sites.
looking to the town to plow that?
No, it's Class 6, and the town need not accept any responsibility for it.
if the town did, it would become responsible for that.
Well, once it's paved, I just want to clarify that, so.
That's the reason why we're requesting that it be paved, so that we don't have an erosion problem, drainage improvements, although Attorney Grill said it was overboard, there's a reason.
All set, thank you.
Okay, Laura?
So it's really just the path that we're looking at there that's going to be cleared, the entire lot's not being cleared, just,
Correct. We're just putting in the access drive, and also if you go to sheet 5, you'll see there's some drainage
right,
structures going in as well, detention pond or retention pond? Detention pond.
Attention.
And a couple of culvert
It's a
type
little
structures.
difficult to see on the plan, but there's a dashed line that you see here that basically surrounds, that's a no-cut zone that
Okay.
was established by the ZBA as part of their variance decision.
and the monopine pole. Did I see that the branches of the pine are made of some sort of rubber hose?
They're fiberglass,
Okay,
so it's a steel structure, and then it has little holes in it, I guess,
Like
for
Christmas
lack of a better word. And when the tower is assembled, the branches are actually inserted in, and there's space left, obviously, for the antennas, which are metallic, but they'll be sort of hidden within those fiberglass branches. And they have to use a material like fiberglass that does, a non-metallic material that doesn't absorb the radio signals that come back and forth to the antennas.
and what's the lifespan of an antenna like that?
Well, the lease is for 30 years. It's, I haven't looked at it, but it's probably 5 years with automatic renewals for a total of 30. That would be the typical industry standard. And then what we typically do is post a removal bond so that at the end of the 30 years, if it's coming down, there's security in place to make sure that it does come down when it ceases
One of the town zoning
to be
requirements to do
used.
that.
That's typical in almost every town.
Yeah, and it's noted on the site plan, too.
See
isn't
'em.
it?
As you drive around, you see them.
Actually, I've seen them before. What threw me a little bit was one of the diagrams showed a very triangular shaped tree. I've seen ones that look like that, but I've not, but one of the diagrams showed a very triangular one.
It may, I'm not sure what
That
you were
was one
looking
of
at,
the
but it may have just showed the
Oh,
antennas.
that was a real tree?
That was the
Sorry,
real
you
tree.
fooled me. Okay. Anyway, that's all. I don't have any further questions.
What happens in a high wind? What will it do to the,
They're
Tree.
engineered to hurricane force winds, and the ice loading, all of that is taken into account. The engineer can probably speak to that better than I can, but there is a spec that's part of the state building code. Is it Rev G now that we're on? I think. But we build to that spec, and they're overbuilt so that they don't, the ice loading factors and the wind loading factors are taken into account.
anything else, Laura?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa?
My only question, if there have been any objections from the residents of Kelly Road, or is it Hazelnut?
That's why it went all the way to the Supreme Court after the
Yeah.
ZBA case.
So, aside from that's my only question at the moment.
Okay.
Can I address the
Ceiling.
easement issue and the Fairpoint clearance letter that staff raised?
Yes.
So I think that the reference to an easement is a misnomer. We're not getting a permanent easement in the sense that we're recording a conveyance from the owner. We are a lessee of this land, including the access drive. So it will be part of our lease interest, not a separate easement that gets recorded. So it's our view there is no easement, and that's why we asked for the waiver. And the reference to an easement should simply say leased right-of-way. That's all we're doing, is leasing the right to put that road in.
Basically, staff's perspective is if that's the case, the waiver doesn't apply because there is no easement for which we need meets and bounds, but we'd like to see the note referencing that is part of the lease agreement.
And we would certainly agree to that as a condition.
Okay, that would be a condition and a noted in the
So
plan.
condition 2 will apply.
And then on the Fairpoint issue, I did get the email on February 22nd. I've been running around out of the office all day, so I didn't get a chance to print it out. I thought I had forwarded it to Tim, but if I didn't, I will do that tomorrow. I know I did the PSNH one, but it may have been an oversight on my part. And on the right-of-way issue, the 25-foot maintenance right-of-way, it's our view, again, that we've done an extraordinary amount of, or have agreed to do an extraordinary amount of improvement to the Class 6 portion beyond what we would normally consider because staff asked us to do it, and, we're trying to obviously work with staff and with the town, but to ask us to obtain, land rights for the benefit of the town, given the minimal impact that we're proposing, is something, and I said this to staff as well, is something we are not prepared to do at this point. We think it, frankly, would be a takings for the town. If someone down the road is going to develop that back lot that someone mentioned, they can get the easement, because that's when it'll be needed, when the road is actually being maintained. Right now, it's an unmaintained Class 6 road, and frankly, I've never been asked by any other town, and I do this all the time, for that kind of extraordinary land right. So we would respectfully disagree with staff on that one. I think everything else that staff has asked for, we've certainly worked with them and tried to meet them with, and I know the engineer had a number of comments that we will review, and Mr. Thatcher will review, and I'm sure all of those, other than the 25-foot maintenance right-of-way, all of those can be satisfactorily worked out, I'm sure of that. So.
John, any? Oh, okay.
Typically, we ask.
Yeah, so something we normally ask anyway. Tom?
Yeah, I have a question. You said you have a lease agreement, and it's for 30 years. Is it in 5-year increments with an option of renewal?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Can it extend beyond at your option, the 30 years?
I have not reviewed it recently, but typically they are only for 30 years, and then at that point it can be renegotiated, but it's not, there would not be a right of T-Mobile or whoever the owner might be at that point to require the landowner to continue the use.
And the other question I had, you said there's a removal bond?
Correct, it's a condition of the
It's a requirement of the zoning ordinance.
ordinance.
The reason I brought this up, to bring this up, is I think I read either in the refile here or something that I got from the LGC about letters of credit that expire and bonds that expire. So who's tracking that?
We are. Finance Department we've gone through this exercise quite a bit when we redid the regulations to allow for performance bonds in addition to letters of credit. And the type of letter of credit we use is a self-calling letter of credit, so that if it does get to the point where it's called, it's at it basically automatically is.
But again, though, with these bonds, the removal bond is specifically that, just a removal bond.
So if they don't pay the annual premium, you get notified?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, question I had, any stone wall disturbance? I think this came before the Heritage Commission, I think it was a couple of years ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, Art. And again, that was the first comment, or excuse me, comment 4A. Again, they are showing some regrading of the roadway. That'll disturb that stone wall.
Okay, is there any, if you are going to disturb the stone wall, I would recommend to visit the Heritage Commission, and they could offer advice and everything.
Okay.
Yep.
I think the intention is to restore it once construction is finished.
Right.
I don't think it'll
Yeah, I
be
think they'd like
any kind of
they'd like
permanent.
to hear that anyway, because it's the statute that protects stone walls. So they meet on the 26th of May, the next meeting. So that would be a condition, I guess.
It's in the memo, so it would be included as a condition.
Okay. Any abutters to this site plan? Anyone from the public have any questions, comments? Yes, sir. Could you free up a microphone, because we need to come to the microphone to speak to it. Our floor microphone works on and off, so. And your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Ryder Daniels, 22 Kelly Road. The abutter is directly, it's not, I guess it is north to this plan, and it's certainly, with all due respect to T-Mobile, has been an ordeal. I appreciate the money and time that they've spent, but I'm pretty sure it's less than the mortgages of the abutters here who were impacted by this plan. There have been a number of challenges, and my first question is, we have been asking and have yet to see the FAA waiver. The zoning board, among their conditions, permitted this site plan with no light at the top of the tower that we'd all be seeing out of our homes blinking. And I just wanted to ask, so that's been secured?
It's a requirement, it's a condition of approval that the FAA permit be obtained before final approval of the project.
Okay.
So in other words, the plan cannot, we can approve it conditionally tonight. They have to meet all those conditions before the plan can be signed. They can't do anything until that plan is signed.
Okay, my second question, and I have reviewed the plans, but probably not these exact current plans that we are discussing this evening, but I wanted to ask about blasting, if any blasting was occurring for the road, given that, and those that walk the road and know it, there are some huge rocks on that road.
Probably the engineer can address that. Maybe you come down here to the microphone, please.
Yes, there will be blasting involved for the roadway.
Question is probably how much and when, and I think that we have procedures for blasting anyway, so that abutters are notified,
Well,
impact on wells, things like that.
based on the roadway profile, it will be a cut as much as 2.5 feet in locations near the cul-de-sac. And I do believe there is ledge, at least in the uphill vicinity of that cut, plus the installation per town request of under drains along the roadway. Likely the installation of those would require blasting as well.
Yeah, and I think what you have to do is work with the abutters also on when you're gonna blast, the impacts and everything, because the concern is to people's wells. Is there gonna be a change? There is a change, it's really your responsibility.
And I'm sorry, having not been through this before and hoping to never live through it again, So the blasting, how is it their responsibility? Is there a legal issue? Is there a bond? Because most of our wells on Kelly are actually at the front of the properties, that's true. So we are very close to like toss a baseball close to where they will be blasting for our well. And again, it's significant. I mean, the boulders above ground have got to be 4 feet up. I mean, I don't understand how this is going to be done without seismic activity.
Yeah,
Typically, what
John?
they'll end up doing, Ryder, is they'll do a pre-blast survey. So again, the blasting company, whoever they hire, Daniels Blasting will go out and actually do a pre-blast survey of residents within a certain area. And again, the driller himself will have a better idea of how far that survey needs to be done. If they're only gonna be popping the first 2 feet of ledge itself that's at the surface, he knows that he's not going 50 feet. He's not doing like they're doing in Merrimack, where they're
Right.
going, a quarry-type cut. So again, prior to him doing that blasting, he'll determine what the survey radius would be, and it's his responsibility to knock on people's doors and do that pre-blast survey.
And I'd only ask, and I don't know if it's even within the planning board's, purview, but how we deal with enforcement of that type of cooperation. So I think, what if we're on vacation that weekend? I think, what if we get the knock? Is T-Mobile permitted to say, hi, we knocked, nobody answered, we're blasting? I mean, I hate to be so detailed about it, but there's precedent for this working with.
well, they should be making contact with everyone, whether they do it all in 1 day or 2 days or a week or over, let's say, a month or something. They should be making contact with everyone so there's communication and that they inform you what they're going to do. Because basically, they have to get a survey how things exist currently. So that's the only way you can make a comparison to if things do change, to have, like a legal record of it.
And we're concerned about foundations, too. Is that covered under this? And is this a law or just a kind of a process they have? Is it a law?
I'm not totally sure if it's a law, Ryder. Again,
Okay.
I'm not quite sure.
So we can research that, but it's possible that T-Mobile's just under best effort. They come, they knock, they hope nothing happens, and if it doesn't, their response is, so sue us. It's
Yeah.
possible that occur.
I would keep after them. I mean, whether they come and ask, they should, but I would, keep in contact with them also to.
I wanted
Make sure
to,
they
and
do.
that issue of cooperation brings up the next issue, which is the canopy. So last fall, we woke up to trees being cut down, and part of the zoning board conditional approval was, this minimal cutting. So we went and investigated and asked, I guess it was then OmniPoint, but we asked T-Mobile what was going on and kind of indicated that we weren't sure they should be doing this, given the status that it hadn't been in front of planning. Then they came back again the next day and did it. So we came to the town and we asked that they stop. The town came up and asked them to stop, whereupon they then just showed up earlier the next day and left before 9 a.m., cutting down even more trees. So that's pretty frustrating. And so I'm trying to figure out, given that level of cooperation and that sense of sort of organizational behavior, what our options are there. I don't even know if they violated the zoning or not. The trees are gone. You can look at the property.
Yeah,
I
'cause-
almost brought photos tonight, but.
Yeah, because really, a property owner can do anything they want with their trees. I think the only thing on statute, I think on a state highway, they can only cut within so many feet of the roadway. Otherwise, they could take everything down, and that's the property owner's right. Then they have to file a yield tax, because they have to pay a tax on the timber that is taken.
But
That usually-
so
that's
does that
why
mean
that-
the
that-
canopy of the zoning board doesn't count here? The zoning board's canopy rule?
I don't know what the zoning board, I don't know what the zoning board did say.
This
on it.
plan does include that no-cut buffer, basically from the facility and the access driveway north to the northerly property line.
Oh.
Until that is actually approved by the planning board, it does not exist on the property today. So that, I would understand that that's probably the rationale that they were using, is they don't have an approved plan, that no-cut
So-
buffer is not in effect yet.
And they own the property, they get, or the actual owner can go out and do that.
And I think what will transpire, the riders, again, now that they've cleared it, again, and this is approved and they build it, then again, they can't get out there and cut within that no-cut zone. So again, the trees. and
Town council has to sign off on the yield tax
Tree,
form.
will continue to grow.
Yep.
The other question I wanted to raise, which is, as I'm learning, likely beyond the purview of this board, relates to the broader question, which is the timing issue. At the time that this plan was approved and we're looking at cell towers, my understanding was in the past, and perhaps I'm mistaken about this, but in the past, other wireless carriers have come to the planning board to ask kind of where we should locate and what we should do to be good citizens of the town and where to put these towers and what the options are, rather in smack middle in the residential neighborhoods. At the time, there was talk of co-locating on cell towers that were yet to be built at the school facility and a couple of others. And the discussion at the time from T-Mobile's justification was, well, we can't because those aren't built. Those, of course, have long since been built, and I wondered about the question, understanding that the plan is approved and the zoning is approved, but the question of asking T-Mobile about alternatives that would be more sensitive to the community needs that exist here in Londonderry, including a town parcel which is right next door to this parcel, which at the time we asked that it be potentially located on to generate revenues for the town in such a tough tax climate and economic condition. And is that something the planning board can ask and request and discuss, or not really?
It's really not in our purview, unfortunately. There are things you'd like to do, but you're limited. Basically, we're limited by statute, and we're limited by our own site plan regulations, so our own ordinances. Tom, I think Tom had a question.
I have a question. With regard to the blasting, is there going to be some kind of published outline or plan that you're going to, or the T-Mobile is going to follow and say, you know, on June 1st, we're going to start planning, we expect it to last 2 days or whatever, and this is the extent. Is there something like that, or are you going to knock on people's doors?
That's generally not an issue that myself as the engineer would cover. It's something that's handled during construction, only by the blasting subcontractor. So I can't speak specifically to what their requirements are, but it's generally not something that we direct on.
Tim, is there something that allows the town to inquire about that, to have something brought to your department, for example, or the fire department?
Well, again, yeah, the fire department will oversee any of the blasting.
They have to have a
out there as
permit
well.
from the fire department anyway.
Yeah, and again, the only thing that I could do, again, Tom, is in a pre-construction meeting, again, we're gonna oversee what's happening out there, is again, bring it to everyone's attention that in the pre-construction meeting, and make sure that, you know, when you're doing your blasting, you need to notify people, and, you know, but again, there is only limited requirements. I don't know all their specifics as far as the blaster's requirements either. Is just like I say, you know, the survey and the notification, I'm not 100% aware of all those requirements.
You know, I understand about the notification, but is there some opportunity for this gentleman and maybe others to say, you know, well, we've been notified of the plan, but we don't like Part A or Part D or something like that, and do they have an opportunity to have some impact? It seems like it's affecting them.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any, to be honest with you, Tom.
To check with the fire department and their requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, they have to go file the permit, and something, you know, I think you should be in communication with the abutters there of the details of the blasting.
I would request, I mean, I think what we're learning because of the myriad contractors and the indication that engineering might be involved in that step is the multiple contractors have been part of the issue and perhaps some of the lack of communication. Again, I don't fully understand what planning's role could be to help with that. I don't know if there's additional conditions you can put on that related to the various, you know, subcontractors, but they, you know, routinely have parked on my lawn, tore up the grass. I mean, if you name it, from all of the surveying and different contractors, you know, this has been the story now for years going through this process, and it's been frustrating. And now as it moves close to some kind of approval, it would be great to get additional conditions or support to make the transition, you know, professional and sensitive to the community.
Yeah, that's probably building and inspection would have some oversight there, or at least you probably, I mean, you can always contact, you know, John Trottier, and we can, when there's problems that do arise, and we see what we can do to resolve them. I think we want to be, you know, at least proactive there. You know, whether we overstep our bounds or not, but certainly something that, I think our,
Do what we can.
John's function should be aware of what is going on, so if you call him, John has an idea. I mean, it's sometimes, there should be I would expect a contractor for the whole site. That individual should be responsible, because that individual has to follow what's on the site plan.
Thank you. Could we bring up the overall diagram again, please, of the site? So my last observation is one of the things that has changed is this notion of where the turnaround zone is. And I don't know if you can see it there. If you can zoom into the last curve, right there, and then go up a little bit maybe. This turnaround zone essentially goes through right to the tree line, if not through it, it's hard to tell, of my property and to where my kid's swing set is. So the question would be, is there in terms of mitigating factors and disruption to the neighborhood, is there an alternative to the turnaround going that way? Originally, it was discussed that it would go the other way just to provide a few feet of boundary in past the tree line, and wondered if there were alternatives there that T-Mobile would be willing to consider.
That's not a turnaround.
Yeah, when you come to the swap places there at the microphone.
This is the location that the zoning board, of the drive that the zoning board
Just
required.
before we go there, it's not a turnaround. It's part of the drainage
Right.
improvements.
Oh.
That's a drainage structure, and that was the reason we need the conditional use permit. We meet all the setbacks, so I'm not sure how we could possibly impact the neighbor's swing set unless he's installed it on the Beal property, because we're totally within the Beal property and meet all the setbacks. But that drive location is what the zoning board required, so it can't be moved
But this-
without going back to the
So
ZBA.
what is that then? Is that a pool of liquid? What is that?
What it is on this side of it, Ryder, is a small depression. So again, the water will accumulate from that inside. There's a culvert there that conveys that water across and then discharges into that riprap apron.
So, and I'm sorry for not following and being slightly slow. Where does it discharge?
Basically at the end, into that riprap, into that.
Water will flow here. This is
right
all
in-
rock.
Right into here. This is rock right in here. So then it dissipates and then it continues to flow down.
So what it
Again,
does
just
is.
in looking at this topo, again, it appears to me that this is a pocketed water. That's what this is indicating. This is some wetlands in here.
It's very wet ground on, again, the tree line, I understand it's the Beals property, but the tree line is there. So it when we walk around there, it's a very, very wet part. All of the ground back there is constantly wet.
Yeah, so again, the water will continue to flow in that direction. And that's, and again, Ryder, we're very sensitive about drainage, and that's
Right.
why we make sure there's no increase in the rate of runoff, pre-development versus post-development.
So then originally, and I perhaps am mistaken, but originally that was a turnaround. Has the turnaround moved, or is the turnaround gone?
I'm not familiar with the turnaround, Ryder, I'm honest with you.
Oh, it's there now, I see. Okay.
Yeah, up above, there you go.
Oh, okay.
Right here. Right by the facility itself.
And again, to confirm, what, other than the road going through the trees, what above-ground lines are there, or any other obstructions that a number of us will be staring at now?
I believe, again, the utility clearance letter that I got, they're gonna take power from the cul-de-sac to a pole on the west side of Kelly Road, then they're going underground, paralleling Kelly Road Class 6 portion, then they're going underground all the way to the facility. So you will not see any above-ground wires, just the ones back at the cul-de-sac. They have to come off the main, and then they'll have a drop pole and go underground.
And what happens in the event, so it can't begin until we get this FAA letter?
Correct.
Conditions are met.
Until all conditions are
All the-
met?
all the
And does that mean
conditions.
no breaking of ground, or some
Correct.
breaking of ground that we've sort of,
No site work whatsoever until the plan is signed and a pre-construction meeting is held with the town.
no site work?
Correct.
In addition, and perhaps you'll tell me, this is the building department, but in addition, in terms of time of day and disturbing family life on the road, are there possibilities to request time of day, or is that beyond the purview of this
No, we can request times, and I know we have in other plans, as requested.
But also,
No.
I believe our town ordinance is 7 to 6 or so, so there is
Yeah,
actually.
there's a
town-
noise, disturbance ordinance, so
Yeah.
they can't make noise for 6,
I think it's 7 AM to 6 PM.
7 AM to
I think
6
it's 7
PM.
to 6, yeah.
That was from the Fred Pico days where that got enacted. It was over 20 years ago.
Thank you. That's the body of my question, and again, I understand the purview of this board, but I would leave you again with the thought of looking at other carriers that have come here and asked where they should be located and how this process has been different. And I again question the location of this and the process of this in the community, given all the myriad alternatives that exist and the disruption it will create. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. There were 3 waivers that the staff
Yeah,
has
the
not
the
recommended.
third waiver number 3 from the recommendation list is no longer applicable because they are going to not be utilizing an easement. Item number 4, it's really up to the board. They are going to provide the utility clearance letter. You can either deem it not applicable or deny the waiver. And then the last waiver was for the fee, which town staff strongly recommends denial on. Since
Okay.
the fee was paid in
Because, I mean,
2008, that money's long been
yeah,
spent.
if we don't approve those waivers, they don't happen anyway. But the other option is that we can actually deny those waivers, so.
But for 3 and 4, you can deem they're not applicable, but for 5, I would recommend a motion on that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we grant the applicant's request for waivers 1 and 2 as outlined.
I already
in-
did those. That was for acceptance.
Oh, okay, never mind. Do we need a motion for,
If it's consensus of the board that 3 and 4 are not applicable, you don't need to deal with those.
okay,
Yeah, maybe the best way is just not to deal with them. So.
okay.
And 5, we would need a motion on.
And,
All right, then, let me make I'd like to make a motion that we deny the applicant's request for the waiver to sections 2.05 and Exhibit 3,
Based on?
based on staff
based on
recommendation.
staff's recommendation. And I believe that's it.
Okay, I have a motion by Dana, second by Rick. Any discussion by the board? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions, show as affirmative. And section 2.05 and Exhibit 3, the request for a waiver is denied. And conditional use permit. We've got the letter from the Conservation Commission. Okay, I'll take a,
So moved that we grant the conditional use permit based on the letter from the Conservation Commission.
okay, motion by Dana, second by Rick. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, show as affirmative. And the conditional use permit has been granted as specified by the Conservation Commission. And I think we can go to the conditional approval.
The one item I think the board needs to determine whether you want to include or not is the roadway maintenance and widening easement for the 25 feet off center line, which is item 5 from the application review items from the DPW memo.
Okay.
Does anybody else on the board have any thoughts on that?
We've heard from the applicant, we've heard from staff. The applicant does not agree with staff on that, so. And it's really our decision. I think some of it probably depends upon, it's not a heavily used roadway. In fact, it's probably rather woody right now, except for the trees that have been removed. I don't know, how strongly do you feel about it, John? Strong, I'm sure. So. I should know better.
I was going to say, when has that question ever yielded a result other than that?
I should know better.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we remove item 5 from the conditions.
You don't need to make a motion to that
Okay.
effect. You just exclude it when you
Okay.
make your motion for conditional
In
approval.
that case, I'd like to make a motion that we conditionally approve the plans based with the following conditions outlined in the memorandum dated April 13th, 2011 from Director of Public Works, with the exception of item 5, the widening the existing right-of-way of the road,
And all other conditions per the staff recommendation memo?
and all other conditions per staff.
Yep, and I think one is to meet with the Heritage Commission
Yes.
also, in regards to the stone wall.
And
It's-
make sure a note's on the plan for the easement, or the
It's-
less
it's in
the...
there. It's in
yeah,
there.
okay,
That's a language thing.
okay, all righty.
Okay,
Second.
motion by Dana, second by Rick. Any discussion by the board? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions, chair votes affirmative. And you have a conditionally approved site plan. And we encourage you both to work with staff and to work with the abutters, especially about the blasting. I hope so. Okay, back to the top here. Next, we have Chinburg Builders Incorporated and Waste Management of New Hampshire Incorporated. This is regards to tax map 16, lot 38, and 60-3. This is a continued application acceptance of public hearing for a lot line adjustment. So this is not a site plan, it's not a subdivision, but it's a lot line adjustment as specified by statute.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, there are two outstanding checklist items, both of which are waiver requests. Assuming the board grants the waiver, staff would recommend the application be accepted as complete. Two waivers relative to acceptance are waivers 1 and 2 from the staff recommendation memo. First being waiver for the boundary of both lots in accordance with the requirements of the regulations. We do recommend granting the waiver, as there is a boundaries plan for Lot 38 that was recently recorded at the registry, and it has been referenced in the notes on the plan. We just would ask that the plan be updated with the proper plan number from the registry in that reference. Item 2 is the Section 303. They have not provided setbacks in the plan as required by the regulations. Again, we recommend granting the waiver, as the plan scale makes the display of these setbacks difficult to read and would likely pose issues with the recording of the plans at the registry. And since there is no proposed development of the lots as the result of the lot line adjustment itself. So again, recommending both of those waivers be granted, and then acceptance of the application if the board so chooses.
Okay, so we just need 1 and 2 to
accept
it.
Make a motion that, based on the staff's recommendation, we grant the waivers 1 and 2 in the letter dated April 13th, 2011 from the town planner.
And also the applicant's letter of March 25th.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Second.
Okay, motion by Dana to grant 2 waivers, sections 3.03, 4.12, and also back to section 3.03. Motion by Dana, second by Rick. Any discussion by the board? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions, shows affirmative. And those 2 waivers have been granted, and we can proceed to the checklist as being complete.
Motion that we accept the plans as complete, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion to accept the plans as complete, second by Rick. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, shows affirmative, and the checklist has been deemed complete, and we'll proceed with our public hearing. Ed, just identify yourself for our records,
Yes,
please.
good evening. For the record, my name's Jonathan Ring from Jonesville Beach Engineers in Stratham, New Hampshire. And with us tonight are Eric Chinburg and Dave Losey from Chinburg Builders, and we also have Steve Podgy here from Waste Management of New Hampshire Incorporated. The plan is for a lot line adjustment to create parcel A, which is adjacent to the waste management property. Waste management property is up there on Liberty Drive. It's an existing industrial site, as you may be familiar. And parcel A is 7.72 acres, which would be deeded from the Lorden property, family trust property, which is 235 acres. It would be deeded from Lorden to Waste Management in exchange for a utility easement, which is shown there, is 30 feet wide, a utility easement which provides the sewer connection from the 235-acre parcel out to Liberty Drive through the waste management parcel. So we have petitioned the town council. There's a Class 6 road, which is between the two pieces, and we have petitioned the town council to abandon permanently that old Class 6 road, which runs through that portion of the property. And I understand that would be a condition of the approval of the plan. There are several waivers. I know the next application on the agenda, which was also on the agenda in March, was a 50-lot subdivision of the big parcel, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But this plan is obviously related to the bigger subdivision application. And there are some additional waivers, two, I think, additional waivers that we could talk about when it's time. Those are in our letter of March 25th that was addressed to the board, and staff has addressed those in their comments. I'll be happy to talk about the waivers now if you'd like, or we can wait.
Why don't we do it now?
Okay. So the next waiver, the first two waivers of our letter have been approved, as you've mentioned, and acted. That would be the boundary survey and the setbacks. The second, or the third waiver, is section 3.11, which is wetlands. And the wetland data for the properties are shown on plans on file at the planning board from the waste management site plan development, which was done a few years back. And then also we have the wetlands shown on the entire Lorden property, which are associated with the subdivision application, which is the next item on the agenda. So because those are shown on other plans which are in town files, we're requesting a waiver from cluttering this plan up to show all the wetlands on the properties. And the second waiver is section 4.12.C.22, which is overhead wires. And due to the scale of the plans, it would be difficult to show the overhead wires and all the utility poles, so again, a waiver is requested from that requirement. And again, those the wires and the utility poles are all shown on the subdivision plans and also on the site plans associated with waste management from years ago. So I think those are the two
So at least we have
additional waivers.
We have track of it. We had record of it, so.
I'm sorry?
Okay, I'm just,
So
commenting.
that concludes my comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay,
know
we'll
if you
go
guys
to,
Yeah, if there's nothing else we
we'll go
can
to
add.
staff.
Yep.
Start with John.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll go through the application review items. As Jonathan indicated, again, the applicant is requesting a waiver to section 412C22. Applicant has not provided location of the overhead utilities on the plan as required by the regs. Staff recommends a granting of the waiver as the plan scale makes display of the overhead utilities difficult to read and likely would pose issues with the recording of the plan at the registry, and no proposed development of the lots results from this lot line adjustment. Item number 2, applicant is requesting a waiver to section 311 and 412C15. Applicant does not provide wetland locations on the plan as required by the regs. Staff recommends granting of the waiver as the associated subdivision of lot 38 indicates all wetland locations, and the site plan on file with the town for lot 60-3, that being waste management site, does indicate the wetland location. Item 3, applicant has not provided driveway site distance plan and profiles per section 309F and exhibits D2 and 3 of the regs. Applicant notes the information is on file at the town in response letter, and we recommend a note be provided on the plans for clarity. Item 4, applicant provide a plan index indicating all sheets in the plan set per the regulations. Item 5, the applicant update the title blocks to include the address of the owners and applicant in accordance with the regs, and also provide the owners and applicant's signature on the plans. Item 6, indicate the status, the class of Liberty Drive on the plans. Item 7, include the DRC zoning variances for lot 60-3 in the notes on the plans per section 411 of the regs. There is, again, the board action items regarding the waivers, which we've gone through, and there is a board info item that this project is related to a separate subdivision application upon lot 38, Lorden Commons, and provides a utility easement across lot 60-3 that serves the new subdivision project. And lastly, the Class 6 road currently exists along within the subject parcels, and that is currently being considered for abandonment by the town and will require action by the town council. That's it.
Okay, thanks, John. Tim?
Don't have much to add. We do recommend conditional approval of the application with the notice of decision to read per the staff recommendation memo. There are two non-standard conditions, those being items 2 and 3 under precedent conditions. The first, which John had mentioned, is the applicant shall complete the process for discontinuance of the Class 6 road running through the parcel with the town council and make appropriate revisions to the lot lines and all applicable sheets prior to final approval of this project by the planning board. And then thirdly, related to the waiver, is that the applicant shall add a note to the plan indicating the reference plans for the wetland locations on the subject parcels in accordance with the waiver granted, assuming you do, for section 311 and 412C15. Other than that, I have nothing further to add at this time.
Okay, Andre? Anything?
No, I have no further
Okay.
comments.
Scott?
I'm all set.
You all set? Rick? Tom?
The discontinuance of the road.
Yes.
How does that impact this?
Right now, this parcel, because of the existence of the road, is split, essentially, and until that road is, at least within the boundaries of this parcel itself, discontinued, there is an issue with the lots not being contiguous because of the roadway that was only recently discovered to be in existence, was discontinued by the town subject to gates and bars back in 1932, and has not appeared on any maps for the community in decades. So it was only through the research of the surveyor that they discovered that the issue existed, and this is the mechanism in order to make sure that the lots are contiguous per this project and per the requirements of the rezoning for the application, that the lots be transferred between waste management and the Lorden piece in order to complete the rezoning to allow for the project to move forward.
And if we approve this tonight, doesn't he have a certain time period?
2 years.
2 years, okay.
So in a nutshell, Tom, if the road isn't discontinued, what they're proposing here doesn't work. So again, that's why it's a condition of the approval that that thing needs to be discontinued. If it's not discontinued, well,
Because I think it was last Monday.
Last Monday.
There was the,
Yep,
the
first hearing.
apparently some abutters
You usually don't know until you get to the public hearing stage.
using a road from, that everybody says has been discontinued since 1932. Okay, that's my questions.
Okay, Dana?
I'm all set.
So just saying that another way, whatever we do tonight, if the road isn't abandoned by the town, it's...
Some alternative is
going
going to have to be taken care of back here with the planning board.
Laura?
All set.
All set, Lisa? All set? Any abutters to this property? Anyone questions, comments, concerns? This is just dealing with the lot line adjustment. Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it, oh, Chuck. Yeah, why don't you come down here to the microphone and just identify yourself for our name and address.
Charles DeRossi, 53 Old Dairy Road. Not a direct abutter, but right in the vicinity. Will there be an opportunity to discuss something besides this particular issue after this, or?
After this, we get to the site plan.
Okay, then I can
Phase one
discuss
site
something.
plan,
Okay.
that's
Subdivision.
This, I have no question about
I
what
mean,
this situation
subdivision,
is.
pardon me.
Sure.
Subdivision is where you want to talk about it anyway. That's,
Right.
because this is just a lot line adjustment, so it's more.
I guess I do have one quick question, because I've talked to a few people that are involved with the supposedly road that's not used, but it is used, and it is access to some people's property. But if that doesn't get approved by the town council, what is the other option that you can offer them?
ball's in their court.
So they'd have to figure another option and
Yeah,
come back to you?
it's-
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
it isn't really,
Yeah.
because
Our
if,
direction.
I mean, if it's not, the road's not, let's say, dissolved,
Right.
it's, they can't meet the condition on this, this lot line adjustment, so this lot line adjustment doesn't come about, they would have to come back with something, something else.
Yep.
to-
It just, I mean, from this whole process for this particular project, I don't know if it's your new theory here to try to be more workable with people, but it seems like it's flying through with a lot less resistance. The planning department seems to take time to be able to see what the highest number of properties can be put on this, and that's how it was presented. So it's, for some reason, it doesn't seem to be as stringently looked at as, for example, the first issue you had earlier today. That's the more typical way that our town looks at stuff, and I'm just curious as to why that happens, but.
Yeah, it hasn't, I don't know, my estimate, it hasn't moved awfully fast,
Well, it seems faster than most other ones. I mean, the other one was like a year and a half plus in court. I know the town's largest development that's been had here in the last 5 years. I have personal acquaintances with them. When they showed me their plant, they explained that if they had to do it over again, they wouldn't pick this town to do business in because it was just too much of a headache versus all other towns. And that's always been kind of Londonderry's reputation.
Yes.
But for some reason, it just seems like we're just, everything seems to be flying with this one, and I don't understand why, but no one's given me a good reason what the benefits are to a town.
Yeah, probably they're really meeting our regulations.
Yeah.
Because there's some outfits that do their homework and work with the butters,
Right.
and they really have got all the regulations, and then there's not much to do. So
Oh, no, I know.
conditions is only when,
It's just all the little stuff, like, stupid things like signs and all that stuff. It was just, common logic would have dictated we could have been more lenient with some of these big outfits, but we were just resistant and made
Londonderry
it hell.
has its things,
Yeah,
so-
I know. I'll talk more when it's not applicable to this, what I need to talk about.
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Anyone else? Not, I'll bring it back. We get 2 waivers, and then the, conditional approval.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we grant the 2 waivers. First one to section 4.12.C.22, based on staff's recommendation and the applicant's letter dated March 25th. And the other for section 3.11 and 4.12.C.15. Again, based on staff's recommendation and the applicant's letter of March 25th.
Okay, motion by Dana, second by Rick. Any discussion by the board on those 2 waivers? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions, chair votes affirmative, and those 2 waivers have been granted, and they'll be noted on the plan.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
make a
sir.
motion that we conditionally approve the plans submitted with the conditions outlined in the letter from Director of Public Works dated April 13th, 2011,
And staff recommendation.
and staff recommendations.
Okay, motion made by Dana, second by Rick. Any discussion by the board? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and lot line adjustment is conditionally approved. Okay, next item.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. You can stay right there.
Yes.
Okay, next we have Chinburg Builders Incorporated, tax map 16, lot 38. This is a continued public hearing for a 51 lot, phase 1 conservation subdivision and conditional use permit. And
Just to refresh
Okay,
the
Tim.
board's memory, this application was accepted as complete back on March 2nd. The board also granted the waivers to the application on March 2nd. We will get to this a little bit later, but the conditional use permit was also approved by the board on March 2nd. However, due to some design changes, the permit will need to be amended, and we will be recommending the approval of the amended conditional use permit, as John will explain. The rest of this we'll get into after John does his presentation.
okay,
You.
yep, you have the floor.
Will you give us the letter? Not yet.
After you do your presentation.
All right, so, well, the presentation is going to be very brief. As was mentioned, we were here on March 2nd with a complete public hearing for the 51 lot subdivision. There are 50 residential lots shown in the upper right-hand corner of the plan, and we have the 51st lot is the open space which surrounds those 50 residential lots. These are 3-bedroom units, and we have applied for all of the state permits required for this application. We have responded to the state agencies with respect to some comments we've received from them. We anticipate receiving those permits very soon, and we have modified the plans based on comments received from staff on March 2nd, and we expect some additional comments here in a few minutes. We did, as Tim mentioned, have to modify the conditional use permit request letter because there's an additional 100 square foot of wetland impact
in the right-hand side of the plan, adjacent to Old Dairy Road, where there was a catch basin, a head wall that had to be placed for an existing drainage pipe that crosses Old Dairy Road, that staff wanted us to address and modify slightly. So remember what sheet plan, it's probably sheet R3 or R2, R2 I think. Almost there. Yeah, it's just above on the right-hand side. Yeah, right in that area. So we have pond number 200, I think, that comes out of the temporary access road and drains in this direction, and so drain manhole number 7, I think, is the culprit, which resulted in an additional 100 square feet of wetland impact beyond what we had anticipated previous to March 2nd at that public hearing. So we have submitted a revised conditional use permit request letter of March 25th, and the only change is just changing the square footage of those impacts. So I think that concludes my comments. We have addressed, as far as we know, all the staff comments, although I guess there are a couple more that we'll see here in a minute, and we look forward to moving forward.
Okay, go to staff.
Mr. Chairman,
John?
members of the board, I'll go through the design review items. Item number 1 are comments related to the drainage report, which include inconsistencies between the plans, calculations, and the report itself. Comments regarding off-site stormwater impacts and ponding the stormwater on the site. Item 2, the proposed sanitary sewer system for the project will be privately owned and operated by a utility company, and the applicant has submitted additional information relative to the new sewer utility necessary for obtaining the Londonderry sewer discharge permit for the project. It's currently under review by the town. We're requesting that they update as necessary, meeting the town approval, and obtain the sewer discharge permit for the project in accordance with the regulations. Item 3, DES site-specific wetlands and sewer discharge permits for the project have not been received at this time. The applicant shall obtain and provide copies of all project permits in accordance with the regs, and indicate the approval numbers on the cover sheet in subdivision note 5 on sheet G1. Item 4, we're recommending the applicant address and clarify the following on the subdivision plan, sheets A1 through 11. Item A, verify the responsibility for the operation and maintenance of the private detention basin shown on sheet A9 in the covenants meets the approval of the town. Item B, provide monuments, stone bounds along the right-of-way of Old Dairy Road per the regulations. In addition, please provide the curve information along Old Dairy Road boundary on sheets A2 and 3. Item C, provide a slope easement along Old Dairy Road for the proposed shoulder improvement shown on R3 west of the temporary emergency access. And item D, provide the owner's signatures. Item 5, recommend the applicant provide the existing topo and the existing conditions plan that's submitted, that it's missing with this submission. Item 6, we're requesting clarification on the following address or clarify the following on the roadway grading plans. Item A, update the swale detail to include the dimensions for each swale consistent with the drainage analysis and report. Item B, review and clarify the proposed grading design for the updated proposed gravel access drives to serve the detention basins provided with this submission. Proper grading of the access drives has not been completed at this time. Item C, the invert elevation of flared end section 11 at pond 202 is noted below the forebay bottom, would not properly drain. It appears the pipe inverts at catch basin 37 have been updated. We're requesting that they review and update the pipe outlet as necessary to provide the proper drainage. Item D, extend the location for flared end sections 3 and 1 to within the basins and update the riprap apron information to be consistent with the dimensions shown in the drainage report. Item 7, again, recommend that the applicant arrange a meeting with the DPW to discuss if additional off-site improvements are necessary. There are 4 board informational items. Project is subject to a separate lot line adjustment, which was heard earlier. Approval that creates and provides a utility easement across abutting lot 60-3 that serves the new subdivision. Item 2, the applicant has provided copies of the proposed easements, deeds, protective covenants, and other legal documents that are under review by the town. Item 3, the board has granted 4 waiver requests for the project at the meeting of March 2nd. And lastly, the board has granted the conditional use permit for the project at the meeting on March 2nd also. That's all.
Okay, thanks, John. Tim?
A couple of things from the staff recommendation memo I wanted to bring your attention to. First is the sewer utility note. Chinburg is proposing this conservation subdivision as permitted by the Town of Londonderry zoning ordinance. The proposed housing density of this particular project is permissible only with community or public sanitary sewer. The sanitary sewer collection system, gravity, or force main are proposed to be located within the town's future right-of-way. This sanitary sewer system servicing this area is being proposed to be operated by Lord and Common Sewer Company, LLC, a private sewage disposal service subject to New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission approval and regulations. And please see recommended precedent condition number 2 below. As mentioned, we are going to recommend conditional approval of the project tonight with the recommended conditions of approval outlined in the staff recommendation memo. 2 in particular I wanted to bring your attention to that are non-standard from our typical requirements. Number 2 is that Chinburg Builders, Inc. shall petition and obtain approval for the granting of a private sewer utility within the town of Londonderry from the New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission to operate and maintain a sewer utility service to the residential lots once map 16 lot 38 is subdivided upon the terms and conditions of the NHPUC and the town of Londonderry permits in accordance with applicable laws and regulations. Item number 3, that the project is dependent on a related lot line adjustment plan and discontinuance of a Class 6 roadway through the subject parcel. The planning board shall not grant final approval to this project until such time that the associated lot line adjustment, including the roadway discontinuance, are granted final approval by the planning board and the town council for the roadway discontinuance. Outside of that, the conditions are standard conditions of approval. We'll make note under the general conditions that the project is subject to all of our impact fees for school, library, recreation, traffic, police, and fire, all of which will be due prior to the issuance of certificates of occupancy for each of the lots as they're developed. That's all I have at this point.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Anything, Andre?
No additional.
All set. Okay, I'll start the other end with Letha. All set. Laura?
I don't have any questions right now.
You're all set.
Are we in the same situation here with the road being discontinued?
In this case, what we're saying is that if you don't sign the lot line adjustment plan, which requires that discontinuance of the roadway, then you don't sign this plan and it does not get final approval.
I'd like to hear from the abutters before.
Okay,
I have
okay.
more questions, so.
Chuck?
I'm all set.
Dana?
Yeah, I've got one. When we were here last, noticed, and I've had several people come up since then, concerned about all the wells. And I was hoping to get an answer from somebody tonight, and nothing was provided on whether or not anybody checked on whether there would be sufficient water. And I'm also a little concerned because the conceptual plans showed that there was going to be city water, no wells. Yet now it comes in and everybody's got a well. I'm just not convinced that 10 years from now, they aren't going to have problems, and I know a lot of people over in that area had problems over the last 2 years with no water or running out of water or a lot of silt in their water. And I, as a planning board member, am rather concerned that we go ahead with this and everybody's got wells 5, 10, 15 years from now, all those residents could be having problems and no water, and now they gotta pay, and the town's gotta pay to get city water in there.
Yes, I apologize. I should have mentioned that we did do water use hydraulic loading calculations in accordance with the New Hampshire Division of Environmental Services guidelines, and the criteria based on the soil types on this 235-acre property support over 200 lots. The first phase of this is 50 lots. We have 135 lots total, so the hydraulic loading criteria from the state calculations, as I say, support 200 lots. It actually supports 200 4-bedroom lots. These are 3-bedroom lots, and as I say, phase 1 is 50 of those, as opposed to the 200 that the state criteria would permit.
Probably another concern, and this is with the Auburn Road, the old town landfill, Superfund site. I mean, it's cleaned up, it's remediated and everything, but, you know, who knows in the future. And one of the reasons that we're probably displaying some concern is that the town had to provide water for people that were abutted the landfill, that section of Auburn Road. That was at town expense. And we do not want to see like a recurrence of it. I don't know if it could ever happen. No one probably knows. But to be on the safe side.
Yeah, we're
At
convinced.
some point in the future, if some contamination shows up, there'll have to be provision for public water. There is a public water line that goes down Auburn Road to Whispering Pines Trailer Park, and that was provided at town expense probably, oh my God, 20 years ago.
Early 80s.
Early 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
It is true that the earlier conceptual plans were anticipating that we would be bringing water from Auburn Road down Old Derry and into the project. Unfortunately, as we were in discussion with Manchester Waterworks, after that early conceptual plan, we discovered that the water elevation for their tank over by exit 5 does not allow them to provide water service over elevation 390. And unfortunately, we have a high knob in here, so there were some 20 or 30 houses that we wouldn't have been able to service without special booster pumps, and those booster pumps are not allowed in residential situations.
I would, myself, and I think the general public and the people, the potential buyers in here would like something in place to protect them and the town should things happen unforeseen. Too many times things have gone on and things have happened, and 10 years to 20 years, the developer's long gone, and then they're stuck with no water, and they either have to put in new wells or pay to have city water brought in. And I would very much like to see something in place to protect both the town and the future homeowners.
Well, as I may have mentioned last time, I'm not sure if I did, one option would be that if that were the case, then the homeowners association, which will be dealing with the sewer program and so forth on this, could set up a community water system. So there could be some community wells drilled in the low area between, I don't know if that's lot 25 and phase 2. There's plenty of space, there's plenty of open space on the property where 400-foot radius wells could be placed and a community water system installed, if that were necessary, as a worst case. But again, according to the state criteria, there's plenty of water to service this property.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Lynn.
So you mentioned that booster pumps are not allowed within residential areas. What rules dictate that? Do you have any feel for that?
What were you referring to?
State law?
Yeah, it's my understanding that a state law does not allow a house to have a booster pump to lift the water pressure, which might on the street be 10 psi, to the 35 psi, just for that residential use. It's not accepted criteria. That's what I understand.
I'm not familiar with that.
Because
not either.
I resonate with Dana's concern and the proximity of that subdivision to the old landfill. If something happens 20 years down the road, and the town's liable, the town's putting water pipe into all the houses.
What percentage of the houses are at too high an elevation for public water?
In phase 1, I think there are 15 of them. And phase 2, which is future, there might be another 15 or so. So it's not a high percentage, no.
Would it be possible to supply public water for those that can without a booster system?
At a great deal of expense.
Mhm.
It's very expensive getting water there. We have to run a mile, I think, down Old Derry Road.
Okay. Okay.
I'd like to see the law of the RSA that prohibits that.
Yeah, I mean,
The use of
it's
booster
something
pumps.
I'm not knowledgeable
Yeah,
about, so.
I'm just nervous that we're passing up the opportunity because of the cost, the initial cost of doing it.
Yeah, please.
Hi, Eric Chinberg from Chinberg Builders. I've been building houses now for 25 years, and I have never heard of a well that started to suffer from a lack of flow that couldn't be remedied by hydrofracking it. I've never heard of a single case. And in my view, a homeowner who buys a home that has a drilled well takes on a certain amount of responsibility and risk over a period of time to maintain their well, replace the pump when it goes. If they end up suffering a lower flow, there are storage capacity containers they can put in. There are hydrofracking techniques. There are lots of ways that they can ensure that they get adequate water. And I guess I can ask you, have you ever heard of a drilled well in New Hampshire where you couldn't repair it or remedy it to get adequate water? And I guess from my perspective also, this drilled well solution or option has now been part of this process for a year or more. And, you know, we've obviously gone down a path in the good faith that's been known, and that there's, drilled wells that are just a safe, good way to do it. So I would ask that, that you recognize that people who buy a home with a drilled well have a certain responsibility and duty over time to take care of their own water, and there are ways to do so.
The planning board has not seen these plans with the wells, but the wells have been shown on the plans since August. And when we first made our submission October 14th to Public Works and Stantec, the wells were shown on there. But I agree, they didn't come back to the planning board until the public hearing on March 2nd, due to the design review process.
Well, I agree that a well can suffer from low flow over time, and yes, fracturing will help. If the water level and the water table goes down, fracturing it ain't gonna help. And we've had several dry years here, and I saw areas of Londonderry last year dry up that I have never seen in the 10 years I've lived here. So, yes, the water can go low, the water table can drop, and everybody's wells can go dry.
And that would be a situation, certainly, which would be much more expansive than just this one subdivision.
I understand that. But we're also right next to a Superfund site. And who's to say that that contamination won't gravitate over to here? Those are our concerns. And I believe they are valid.
Yes, Laura.
Has there been another instance where a developer, I mean, it sounds like they've done the studies to determine that there's adequate water there right now, and the Superfund site isn't threatening to explode anytime soon. Have there been other developments that have been required to make sort of backup contingency plans for, I haven't been here forever.
The zoning ordinance allows for projects of this nature to either be private well, private septic, private well, public sewer, private well. There's a variety of options. There are different requirements depending on what option is chosen, but in terms of meeting the requirements of the ordinance, this meets the requirements of the ordinance.
Are you aware of another development that's been asked to have a backup plan once their original plan's been approved?
Not in my 11 years here reviewing plans in Londonderry, no.
I don't really recall any at all, so. Tom?
You're testing for water. What was the result? What kind of a size project can you have, a development can you have there, based on?
Yes, as I mentioned, we did lot loading calculations using the state of New Hampshire criteria, and this parcel, which is 235 acres, would service well over 200 houses. And phase one is 50 houses. So there's that criteria indicates that there's plenty of water available from this piece of property that would service these homes.
And what's your the total planned development?
135 lots. but we'll be back to the planning board before we get there. This is just for 50,
Right.
you know, we've got phase 2, phase 3, so we have to come back.
Yeah, none of the future phases have been designed at this point from a
Right.
roadway design, drainage, all those things would be open for new public hearings when they come into the future.
And is the testing that he's done for the 200 houses, is that the only testing that's available? Is that the
I
standard
think
testing?
what he's done is, it's theoretical, correct, John? You didn't do any, yeah,
It's based on the lot loading criteria for the soil types on the property,
yeah,
yes.
so.
And we will explore, based on this comment, certainly, we'll explore this a little further before we come back here for phase 2.
Okay.
Okay. All set, Tom? Okay,
Yes.
Rick? Scott? Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, okay.
not to belabor
okay,
this,
then.
but just getting back to the water. Are there monitoring wells up in that area?
Not on Old Dairy Road.
I don't know,
No.
they're all
No,
off of,
it's in
Auburn
the,
Road?
yeah, it's right in the site. I think the state
on the
is
site
doing the
and then
sampling. I think
downgrading it.
it's on a yearly basis now, because doesn't seem to be a problem, at least.
Is that landfill a
Correct.
mile away? Where is it exactly?
Right across the
As a
street.
crow flies, right there.
Yeah, it's pretty much like in the corner of
That's
Auburn
downslope.
and
Our,
Londonderry.
our site drains over in that
Because
direction,
that
so we're
drains more
flowing-
toward Whispering Pines, and then
we're
well, there was a
flowing-
landfill up there. I think there's houses in there now, also across the other side of Auburn Road.
And
Our
does-
water is uphill of that landfill area then.
And does the water, the groundwater, do we know what direction it generally runs in? I know the surface
Down.
water may go that way, but
The
not
groundwater-
necessarily groundwater.
Yeah, generally, the groundwater runs the same way. And that's what I say, we have a bedrock knob right there in the middle of our property, which is sheeting off, draining in that northerly direction.
Okay, any abutters or any interested parties? And I know Chuck's got some questions, so going back to the microphone.
Chuck DeRossi, 53 Old Dairy Road. I guess I'm getting an education here. I'm not a water expert, but I don't know, I guess I'm more common sense, and stuff doesn't add up. I mean, if individual wells don't work, then you do a general well, you're still pulling off the same water supply. How that changes anything, I don't understand. To give you a little bit of history, I've been where I've been living at for over a quarter of a century. In the last 10 years, two of those 10, I've been sucking silt out of the ground, and I've got a drilled well that's deep. My neighbors and I, we don't water our lawns to make them lush green lawns. We try to conserve water, and we're lucky most of the time. But given that fact, now if you add 50 development units right now, and total of 138, or I don't know, it started at 128, then it was 150. It keeps changing all the time. I guess they don't know for sure. If you add that to start sucking water out of the ground, then you compound that by the fact that you're taking the water out of the ground. Most of the water you take out of the ground isn't consumed. It goes back into your septic system, gets into your leach field, and it percolates back down, helping the water level maintain. What you're doing here now is you're pulling the water out of the ground, and then you're sending it through a sewer elsewhere to be disposed of in some river, so you're not even getting that water to be recycled in addition to the usage you're getting. So the full amount of water you're pulling is getting displaced elsewhere, whether it's consumed or carted out in a sewage system. I guess further up the road on Emerald Drive, which is not that far away in Derry, the town of Derry about 8 or 10 years ago had to pay to put all those people on town water because they had shortage issues. And I guess the town just has a lot of money there, so they felt like putting them on town water for no reason. I think there was a reason, because the water has issues in that whole region. By loading it up with these extra units, you're going to cause everybody to go down. And then at that point, the town is responsible to foot the bill to put us on town water and to pay for it too, because our decisions here are going to cause that. And you can put that to the bank. I'll tell you right now, it's going to happen. We're already experiencing issues with water shortages. How can adding more units that aren't even going to percolate most of their water back into the water table going to make the situation any better? And yes, when you buy a house with a well in it, you expect to have maintenance in it. I agree. But if you stick a development right next to us that's going to suck all the water out, now that's fair to us? I don't think so. In other situations where there's other developments, maybe that's not an issue. that's why they wouldn't have to be required to do something about it. But we're already experiencing this. And, you know, I'd have to see, I guess, that statement from the state saying there's 200 houses worth of water, but I'm venturing to think that that might be taken into consideration, that the water is getting re-leached back in. I don't know if it means you could just pull all that water out and send it away elsewhere, and it's going to still be sufficient. But, you know, I just can't see it. Also, I think if this information was told to the town council at the time that they were presenting this issue to them, to allow the town, to make the town change the zoning, if they wouldn't have changed the zoning was already zoned properly for that piece of land. It would have allowed about 30 or 40 houses there. They had to go to the town with the support, I think, of you, Art, Mary was there, and Mr. Thompson, full-heartedly telling the town council this is a great thing for the town, which is tax negative. There's safety issues there. The road S's, all those people coming down from the hill, there's going to be accidents galore. I can't even get out of my own driveway without taking my life in my hand. And then Auburn Road wasn't studied. There is no capacity there. But I guess for the first 50, you're saying there's no traffic issues, which I was wondering about that too. But I guess I'm not an expert, but again, just common sense dictates certain conclusions in my mind. When the town council was pitched this idea to change the zoning, it was supposed to be 128 lots. It was supposed to be municipal sewer and water. That's the decision made, and they almost didn't even get it there. 3-2 was the vote. And when questioning the two out of the 3 councilors that voted against it, I was asking the reason behind it, what benefit to the town, what the developer and the landowner aren't even town residents. What is this that's going to help anybody? Besides, you know, safety factors involved. My answer I got from one of them was he forgot, he didn't remember it. The other gentleman said it sounded like a good idea. Well, I don't know if that's good criteria to make an important decision like that. And I think Monday I have to go back to the town council. They need to revisit this issue, and I don't know if there's a way to go back and put it back to the other zoning, but I think that they should have the right to, because they made a decision based on information that isn't being used.
It's still based upon one acre zoning. And what it does, it does concentrate housing in a smaller area, but then it leaves the rest of the area to be open. You know, so
Correct, I understand. I mean, you've got the lots elsewhere, they're clustered together, but
Right.
what I'm saying is the amount of houses that you can't, if they left the zoning the way it was, there was no way they could put this many units in there. And I guess the town studied it for how the best way to get the most houses you can on a property, which why we would spend our town employees' time doing that, because it's tax negative. It costs us money to do that. I don't understand, but that's just one of the mysteries. But the fact is, I think if the board, the town council was presented with that these were all going to be wells, then not only would it have been a safety issue I would have brought to their attention, but it would have been the lack of water, and I don't think they would have gotten the zoning change. So I think the town council needs to revisit that, and I'm going to bring that up to them. And then I guess if they go back to the other zoning, this whole thing goes away. But you have to understand, and I have nothing against the developer and the owner. They're in a position where they're here to make the most profit they can for the least cost. Bringing in water is not a cheaper thing. It's more expensive. So, of course, they don't want to do it. They're there to make the most profit they can, and more power to them. I have no objection to it, but I just can't see it on the back of my property and all my neighbors. It just doesn't work for me, and it shouldn't work for the town, because it's going to cost all of you money to put water in our houses. It's going to cost all of us money because all those residents are tax negative. So there's absolutely the safety issues that are incurred, which again, I think the town's putting itself in a situation. Why does it want to be liable for these things? That S-curve there and that downhill coming down from the dairy end, that's like a turnpike now. When those cars are going to start inching out, and there'll be 200 cars to start with, because the average house has 2 cars, how are they supposed to inch out? When I got one, I just come out of my driveway, and I'm ready to get clobbered by the cars zipping down. I just, you know, these things should have been looked at. I don't understand it, but anyway, that's not the issue here, and my other issue with the town council I'll take up with them, but I think that I was so happy to see on one of the meetings, and at least Mr. Coons was the one that brought this water issue up, because I don't understand why the minute they said wells, when I heard it on the TV, my jaw dropped, and I go, where did this well thing come from? If this was the rules, it should have been known, and at the time they were looking for rezoning, and I think it would have been a different picture. And I think if the law allows it for them to revote, I think they're going to find that your common sense person will say, forget it. And they either do town water, I think, or you should have them bond for the cost of town water to the whole area, if the need becomes, which it will become. I'll put money on that.
But really, our regs give them the option, and
yeah. No, but I'm saying if you allow them to do the wells, and then with a sewer that's there, and all the water gets carted off the property and away, then you will be contributing to us all being low on water.
Yeah, and I think the state's involved with this also, saying that, there's sufficient water and everything.
Again, why did I run low? I guess because I must be an idiot. I don't maintain my well. My well's deep. I've changed pumps on it. I maintain my stuff. Believe me.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's the issue. But
New
it's your
Hampshire
choice.
has a lot of soft rock, so there's a lot of sedimentation, so it's very common for sediment filters and everything in the southern part of the
If
state.
that's your opinion, I guess that's great. But again, the whole pretense of this zoning change was done on false information, and I think that's where I got to start back. But the water is an issue. In the future, water is going to be worth more than oil because that's the world's situation here. And you start messing with people's water, I think you're starting to really cause issues that are near and dear.
I don't agree with the false information statement, so.
Well, again, I think you were there. You disputing that they said it was going to be municipal water? I mean, the tapes say it.
Only at the conceptual discussion they did say that. And our expectation, it would come back.
No, it said that the only one I went to was when we went to the town council for the zoning change. You and Mary were there, and so was Mr. Thompson, and it was 128 units with city water and sewer.
Yeah, this is what we believe, this is what we're given information at that time.
I want an answer too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
John?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if you would so indulge me, can I ask the planner a couple of questions?
Certainly.
Refresh my memory, please. When this came to the council, it was 128 units?
At a conceptual level, yes.
At a conceptual level?
Yes.
Okay. My understanding at that time was, when it came as a conceptual level, that it was public water and sewer.
At that time, it was, yes.
I was the deciding vote. What you're presenting here tonight is now new information. Now, I don't know what the statute says with regards to the council, and it's a different council than it was then. Okay? My name is John Farrell. I'm the town councilor. In my opinion, if I had different information, I would certainly weigh my vote based on the information that's presented to me. If I approve a zoning change and they come back and change what they say to the planning board after serving on this board for 11 years, I find that somewhat unreasonable. That the legislative body says, okay, and then they come back and say, never mind, we want to do wells, but we got the zoning change already. This town councilor has a problem with it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. That's all I've got to say. Just consider it. It's an issue, and I'll just keep fighting it. And, I fought the town before when the town was going to bring a recycling center. It cost me thousands, and I'll do it again if I have to. But I really shouldn't have to be footing these bills. And if any of my neighbors are watching, it would be appreciated if you get your butts over here, because it's for your benefit, too.
Yeah,
So,
they certainly
anyways.
come or email.
Thank you.
Tim. Okay, you're welcome. Anyone else? Andre?
I just had a question regarding the methodology that DES uses in order to establish the well yield. Does it take into consideration what this gentleman said regarding water going into the septic and leaching into the ground, or is this?
Yes, when it's the appropriate time, I'll respond, and I guess now is the appropriate time. That the state criteria actually deal with the stormwater. So it's the rainfall coming from the sky that is hitting the ground and then percolating down through. The leach field water is not part of that requirement. It's not part of that state criteria. So the leach field, it doesn't matter whether the leach fields are going back into the ground for this particular calculation in the state criteria. It's a stormwater coming from the sky, from the average rainfall data. And in fact, the state criteria here require that we go 50% of what is a normal rainfall year. So we're already looking more or less at a drought condition. So on an average basis, it's the stormwater that's recharging the aquifer. It doesn't matter in that case.
The gentleman brought up a question, and I just wanted to make sure if it was in the equation or not.
It doesn't matter in this calculation instance whether the well water is going into the leach field or it's going into a sewer system and being carried off-site for the purposes of that calculation.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board.
Okay.
So for us to discuss. Yeah, Tom?
Well, I've heard two sides of this thing, and I guess my question is, I'm not convinced one way or the other. You know, I would like to know, since we're going to make a decision that's going to affect people's lives and a major cost of running their house for the next, 50 years, I'd like to have some confidence in one number or the other. And, and frankly, and I'm going to take this from where I work. If you're trying to get something done, you get the burden of proof, and I haven't been convinced one way or the other on the water issue. So, it's not like a criminal case where you start out with the presumption of innocence. Here, you got to make your case, and I don't see it here. So, I'd like to see some more information.
Yeah, because I think that's the critical thing with this is the water. Because when we were working on, I think the presentation, all we had information was for the conceptual discussion we had, which was public water and so many units on it. So there's probably two things we can do. We can either conditionally approve it, or put another condition in, or to continue it to May 12th. Or 11th, I guess. Maybe the second Wednesday in May. Or looking for more information.
If I can ask, because I don't recall, if you conditionally prove something, does that start some kind of clock on him?
In this case, they would have 2 years then to meet the conditions of approval. If we continue out to next month, we will be reaching the limit of the 65 days under RSA 676-4 in order for the board to make a decision. We'd be basically at 60 days at that point.
But they could grant an extension.
They can grant the extension, correct.
I'd be reluctant to go down to some path where we're then on a clock where we're not controlling the event.
Right.
So I'd be more in favor of continuing it until we get the information, but, that's...
Yeah, and I think that's up to the board, how the board feels.
I agree.
Okay. Okay, I'll take a motion for continuance then if...
Specifically...
okay, just a moment. Letha, and I'll do Laura.
If we continue it, then what are we asking
was gonna be
him
my
to come
question.
back to us with? I mean, we need to be specific. We can't just delay this a month and say, okay, we'll talk again later next
That's a
month.
good,
So what are we asking him to do?
That's a good point. I think really what we'd have to, I think what the board is saying, at least some of us would like to see a public water system.
Well, since none of us are water experts, can we get an independent opinion that isn't paid for?
Can we get like
somebody else?
The information from the state, what the state's saying? If the state says it's fine, then the state is part of the equation on any, I look at it as any liabilities.
I'm not sure what the state, I understand part of it, but I believe they have a limit on the number of people, the number of bathrooms, so on and so forth, is how they rate a well.
Yeah.
And the water supply needed to support that house. I know they do that on a septic, as to how much a septic can support. And I think it's the same way on the water. I'd like to know those figures and what it's involved.
Well, one of the things, the gentleman said you've done some calculation, I guess. Would that be something that you guys could look at and tell us? You could give it to me, and I could make heads or tails out of it.
Hydrogeologist, so again, you say, get a consultant to look at it. Your regulations allow you to require them to have a hydrogeologist look at the situation and put together a report.
Maybe that'd be the thing to do.
And again, what John is talking about is theoretical. Again, there hasn't been any drilling done or any well yields or anything, John?
No.
Somebody who knows what it's all about and isn't being paid by...
Or, independent.
Independent.
Yeah. Also, Letha?
Yeah, I'm just concerned that our concern here is with the people around them as well. So normally, if they come back, if we ask them to provide us with more detailed information regarding how much water and what quality of water is coming out in that area, and they bring that to us, what will we still be looking for? I want to make sure our request is complete. So can we ask town staff or someone to take a look at the surrounding areas, the abutters, and what their current water situation is? Will a report that you're talking about provide us with that type of information, or is that something that they'll be specific to this site and this site alone?
I think it would have to be specific to the site, and I think there'd have to be, want to know if there's sufficient water in the aquifer, if they're drawing this amount of water out for the residences they say they're, going to build, what is the effect on the surrounding residences? I'm sure it's all drawing from the same, general aquifer, and I don't know what there is up there for aquifers anyway. I know which way the water flows, and
Yeah. I think we ought to ask for information from somebody
From a
who makes
hydrogeologist.
their living
Right. You can,
doing this.
you can run the numbers and
yes, just
So
to-
support a
just to-
development the size of the applicant's proposing.
Maybe you could affirm what we've been told, just that we've got assurances that there's not going to be any water problems. Basically, put it in layman's terms.
That was basically my question. I mean, if the town council may have a separate issue to bring up on this, but as far as we're concerned, I think our problem is looking at whether or not an
Yeah,
independent.
it's really the water and what exists as legislation currently. John?
Mr. Chairman, if you would please try to help me understand something. Can this be sent back to the town council for the zoning to be looked at again? You seem to know most of the statutes.
I would say that it's probably in the purview of the
separate.
town council.
Right now, it's a conditional rezoning. The zoning becomes effective upon approval of the lot line adjustment and approval of the subdivision, as long as the planning board deems it to be reasonably consistent with that which was presented as conceptually. The question is as well as reasonably consistent with what was presented conceptually. If it's determined by the board that it's not, then we have an issue. If it's otherwise, in order to change the zoning again, it would require another request to be brought to the planning board, have a public hearing here, or a petition to guarantee a hearing with the council. But ultimately, those are the only approaches I know of at this point that would be allowed to move forward to change the zoning.
If this was conditionally approved tonight, then the zoning couldn't be changed then, from what you're saying?
Until it is granted final approval, the zoning does not change on this property. As it sits today, this property is still split zoned industrial 1 and residential. When the lot line adjustment is approved and signed, and this plan is approved and signed for the subdivision, that's when the zoning becomes effective for the property.
Mr. Chairman, what I saw was a very reasonable plan that came in for about 128 units. This dates back some time, with water and sewer, in an area where we usually have public water because of the Auburn Road Superfund site. When it was presented to the town council, it was presented as such. What I'm seeing tonight, and I didn't come down here for this reason, is that now has a capacity of 200 homes or 500 cars. I don't believe what was presented to the town council for rezoning is this project that is now being presented tonight. I would ask, if it's not within the planning board's purview, then I will ask the town manager to have the town attorney look at this and see what we need to do and what the next step needs to be, if that's what you would like me to do.
Yeah, because, the town council is the adopting authority, being the governing body. And definitely could originate there, because actually this board was operating under the same information that we gave the town council from what we had at the conceptual discussion.
The number of units again, it was 151?
Well, I would have to look back through my notes. I know our original proposal...
This one right here.
This one right here is either 135 or 132, but I would mention that we're talking about 50 lots.
Yeah.
The 132 can't happen until we come back to the planning board at least once more, and probably 3 times more. What we anticipate, what that plan shows, it's a conceptual overview, complete subdivision. It shows phase 1, which is the 50 lots in dark. Then it shows phase 2, which is 25 lots on the lower right-hand side, at which time we'd be back through a design review. We would propose a solution to eliminate the S-curve on Old Derry Road. There are a lot of things going on here that are being discussed that have no effect on phase 1.
Sir, with all due respect, I've spent 11 years
Oh, I
on the planning
understand.
board. The man is looking for a number. What's the build-out?
The build-out on this plan is 132, but I think when we were here at town council, we may have, because we had another loop in there, we had 155 lots at one point, but I'd have to look back through my notes to see what we had at the town council meeting.
Okay, it was 128 from what I recall, but what's the capacity of this land? If you were to build this land out of capacity with wells, what's the capacity?
Can I respond to that?
Sure, please.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yep.
We have a conceptual plan here now that shows a maximum number, is it 132?
I wouldn't say it's a maximum number.
But how many
it
are shown
shows-
on that plan?
I believe there are 132. They're not numbered because,
I would go on record
132.
saying that we would not seek more than the number that are on that plan. So one of the conditions of this Phase 1 approval could be the overall master conceptual, we've never come back and try for more than that number. And the other thing I would request is that there was an issue with the traffic study that had people concerned that when we got to more lots beyond this, maybe to 100 lots, there may need to be some improvements to that intersection. So we all agreed that we don't know if those future lots will ever happen. We don't know, what will happen beyond these 50. So we agreed that we're only asking you to approve 50 lots, and that if we're successful with this phase and we want to come back for more, we would have to address that situation, look at that intersection again. If it needed to be improved or had to do some widening, then we would address it then when the capacity issues caused it to potentially get worse. And I would suggest the same thing. There was a mention of, we've heard, 2 different data points on the wells. We could support or back up John's calculations, and that would be an easy thing. It could be a condition of approval to say, follow that up and show us to the satisfaction of Stantec or the staff that this is properly calculated. In that case, it was for 204. We don't want to build 204. It said there was capacity for 204 4-bedroom homes. We're only asking for 50 3-bedroom homes. So it seems to me the factor of safety here is quite large, and that we could proceed with this phase knowing that, even as a condition of this, you could say back up his stuff with a hydrologist that's an independent. That would be another condition of this. But I don't think anyone would argue that 50 lots is going to make the water fail in the area. And that's what we're seeking. And we have a report that we could easily provide as a condition of approval that says 204 could be put there without causing issues.
Just another point to make is if this rezoning were for whatever reason to revert back to what is there today, this 50 lots would still meet the requirements of the conservation subdivision ordinance based on the area of the land that is still zoned AR1. So this portion, the first 50 lots, is not dependent upon that rezoning.
Okay, so the maximum number that you've indicated is what's on here?
Whatever is on that plan, we would
I think it's 132. It's in note number 3 or 4 in the upper right-hand side.
So we could make a condition of this 50 lot approval that would survive the
Note number 3.
whatever, that we would never see, even if zoning changed or whatever, that we would not seek more lots than are shown on that conceptual multi-phase plan.
So 132 would be the upper limit for dwelling units.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's only 4 more than the 128, because the 128 is what I recall from the conceptual. So. Would the board be comfortable with a maximum of 132? This is irrespective of the water issue.
Yes. For an answer.
Okay, but what we would need is a hydrologist to review, the numbers and everything, so that, we have to make this board comfortable with the ability to supply potable drinking water to that community and not disrupt the other wells in the area.
Then would we be saying that he can proceed with the first phase, and that as a condition of continuing past that, he needs to show this? Or are we saying everything's on hold for a month while he produces
Everything's
this?
on hold for a month, which would be a continue of the application. So we'll have a month to come back, and then we continue the public hearing in May. with the information that we've requested. Hopefully Tim's kind of has it distilled down from a number of voices up here.
We should be able to, the hydrologist should come so we can ask
Yeah,
questions.
yes. Yep. Chuck, you need a microphone.
Thank you. Chuck DeRossi again. I'm just a little confused. I know you're trying to work with everybody and be nice and stuff, but it doesn't bother you that the original whole assumption, you even said yourself, was for the 128 to the 132 is no big deal. It's the city water. Why don't you just let them stick to what they originally said? Make it city water. Why do we need to even entertain this?
Well, it's basically an option. I don't think we can force the developer to do that. You know, it's because the way our regs are, it is an option for them.
But even though that was the main reason, that wouldn't have never passed the town council for the rezoning if this fact was given then. I mean, that should be enough to outrage right there.
Yeah, I mean,
You've heard it right from the town council that would have made the vote
Put
change.
it this way, I'm not happy. I'm trying to seek resolution, you know? That's what I'm trying to do.
Thank you, thank you.
Andre?
Yeah, I do got to note that although what was presented to the town council was for rezoning of this portion, the bottom portion of that was zone industrial, top portion AR1, and what was presented was 128 lots, and at the time it was water and sewer. But also, you got to remember the other circumstance that that led staff to recommend this rezoning was the fact that I think all of us would love to have they kept this as industrial, and have that road that now Camco now occupies at the end of the cul-de-sac were to continue on, and that be developed industrially. And that was the game plan, I think, from the 80s and the 90s, for that to continue on, because this whole area was slated to be an industrial park. But when Camco was located there, it ended at cul-de-sac, and because the building is right in front of the cul-de-sac at the, I guess it would be at the mid part of the screen there, yeah, right there. That road cannot go any further because the building is right there in front of it. Therefore, the possibility of that being developed industrial is pretty much gone.
This is the conservation easement over all of this land in here as well.
And so that option is now gone. Therefore, and also in past developments, there was a proposal at one point in time. I think it was a firm out of Denver was looking at the former dump site as a possible affordable housing complex. And I know there was some feedback that said that was not wanted in that area. So there were bankers. We like to keep something more in line with single-family housing over there, and therefore, with all those factors being in the mix, the recommendation for AR1 seemed to be consistent with some of the feedback that we received in the past. So, although I granted that what was presented to the board, to the council, was a development with water and sewer. The sewer part of it is coming to fruition. The water part of it, it is an option in our regulations. But the rezoning to AR1, there was other factors other than just water that were being considered and was proposed to the town council at the time. That just seemed to be the path that at least we had heard that people wanted to go.
But was water presented as, was town sewer presented as the method, the chosen method of the development when it was presented to the town council?
Town sewer was part of there, and that's being proposed.
And even though it's an option that the developer has, the presentation to them was town sewer.
Yeah,
And town sewer is being
town
provided.
water.
Yeah, it's just the water aspect that changed.
But, yes, Laura?
When, is it all right to ask a question?
Yeah.
I want to get you
Yep.
straight on what our responsibilities are versus the council's responsibilities, because they may have a real problem with how that went and being given information that's since changed. And maybe they'll decide to try to revisit it somehow. But as far as...
Because they could revisit it, they could give it back to send it back to the planning board for,
So setting aside what they can do,
yeah.
we, regardless of whether we put this off for a month, our choices are going to be to approve the plan.
We have to go with what's on the books.
To approve or not approve. But if we approve, we don't have the ability to say, but you must do town water, correct? Because they have the option?
I don't
Am I
think-
understanding that correctly?
I don't think we can really enforce that, or do that, Tim.
It would be something that I would expect would likely result in legal challenge.
What if, as Mr. DeRossi indicated, the water is, as he says, for everybody up there, and not as the developer has indicated? What if the expert comes in and says it will not support that?
If that's the case, then the board has justifiable public safety, health, and general welfare reasons for which to make a modified.
So then we have the option then to decline it at that point if there's some
If you have
evidence.
reasonable reasons for denial, absolutely.
But if I could just finish up on my question, so we can say no, we can say yes, we can't say, but you must do town water. We can say no, but if our information shows that there's adequate water supply there, we say no because we'd rather they use town water, that's not,
I would not,
Probably
I would not
legally.
recommend the board go down that road.
okay. I wanted to make sure I understood what our options were
Yeah.
versus what the council has to figure out for themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's
Thank you.
two different things.
Then I would like to see what a hydrogeologist says.
Gentlemen, there, maybe use Andre's microphone and name and address, please.
Doug Jones, Wilson Road. I was just wondering, development of that size, there's no hydrants, fire hydrants required in a development like that? Or if not, where is the closest one?
Closest hydrant is on Auburn Road. There's hydrants along there.
How far would that be to,
That is
say,
probably,
the furthest?
Probably like a mile.
The furthest lot.
Probably like a mile, at least a mile.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the
And
closest.
is there any concern about of the fire department?
I know the
situation
fire
with that?
department is part of the design review on this anyway, and we can check, see what the fire department's comments were anyway.
Okay.
If they do that concern, I know that we would, you know.
You wouldn't know about it?
We wouldn't be at this point.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
The fire department's comments were relative to the street name, and they had no objection to the proposed plan modifications at the time.
Chuck?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick notes. In reference to the firm that came in for the Auburn Road 800 unit low-income housing, that wasn't because everybody didn't want low-income housing. Originally, when the town was going to be brought to court because they wanted to have a recycling center there, and I was part of the one that spent thousands to fight, the deal was that land owned by the town is supposed to be left for recreational use. And future board wasn't, the board at the time wasn't really looking at it to substantiate the previous board's decision to do that. And then they decided that they should follow the decision of the original board, that land should be left for recreational use, not low income. But I just wanted to clarify that situation there. And I forgot my second
I know the
board.
original intent was to use it for recreational use.
Correct, yeah, because you were then
Yeah,
there
but-
back then, too. I mean, when I moved to Londonderry Road, it was a dirt road, so it's been quite a while. I've been there from day one, but the subject we were on before I forgot myself was, could you remind me? Do you
Okay,
I-
about the water.
Oh, the fire hydrants, I'm sorry. That's what I wanted to just say. In reference to the fire department, they might have a different tune. I know, and my sympathies go out to the family of that tragic fire today, but the reason why they couldn't have done a lot more is because they said the closest water was 900 feet away, and the closest water to these units will be more than that. So, I mean, they might have a different thought about the fire hydrant situation.
We don't have a lot of hydrants in town.
No, I know, but I mean, again, this just happened last night, and you know, my heart goes out to the family, and I'm sure as we all do, but that was a main concern, so.
Yeah, that's why our fire department always has a pumper truck, because you gotta pump the water. Part of being a rural community, no hydrants, or very few. Yes, yeah, you have the floor.
I guess another thing I'd like to point out is that the zone line that's residential would completely allow, even if for some reason that zoning got reverted or was never passed, we could do what we're doing, I believe, in this exact 50 lots could exist in the residential zone. So, I mean, obviously you can see that I'm hoping for a conditional approval tonight, and when I put in perspective that we're seeking 50 lots and we have no approvals or any design for any more than that, we have a report that could be a condition or even augmented by a hydrologist as a condition of approval that, you know, you could require that they get independent confirmation that 50 lots could be serviced with the water out there. You know, I just feel like so we have some people who have made some questions about wells without real data. We've also had everybody look around, and nobody's ever heard of a well that you couldn't make work through fracking. We've got 1/4 of the number of homes here than our report says you can do. They have fewer bedrooms in them than the report said, 3-bedroom versus 4. You know, we're obviously hoping that we can provide nice, affordable homes for people this year. And in order to do that, that month is a big concern. And I understand. I just wanted to make that final plea and make that request.
Yes. I think this board would probably be most comfortable hearing, you know, before we take any action, hearing from a hydrologist, you know, so that we're comfortable with the water, you know, the amount of water, the quality of the water, and so forth, and the effects. I think that'll make us, I'd say myself and I are more comfortable. Laura?
Just a question, and
Yes.
I'm just putting it out there, wondering how confident you are in the studies you've done so far. I don't know if it might be possible to approve it on the condition that that the water situation is independently verified, and make it a condition, have them agree that if it isn't independently verified, then they'll go the town water route. That way, if they could get their conditional approval tonight, but still have that assurance that if the water is not there, then they're going to hook up to town water. Maybe that's completely unrealistic. Maybe there's no way you can make that promise, but it's just an idea if they want the conditional approval tonight.
Yeah. I mean, it's a possibility, but I think, I don't know, I would rather hear, you know, before I make any decision. Conditionally, you're like getting partway there. You know, I know it's going to work for the developer, probably needs it and everything, but I think we've got to look at it, you know, as from a safety aspect. You know, I think because drinking water is becoming a precious commodity. I think as we go in the future, it's going to become more precious. So I think it's up to how the board feels. I'm not going to, you know, Lynn?
Just a couple of comments. Yeah, one is I think we need to look at it from a complete project perspective. You know, I appreciate phase one's only going to be a portion of the houses, but it was presented as a project, and I think we need to look at it from that perspective. And just the change, and the change happening the way it happened, I'm just leery of making any decision tonight.
I agree. Okay,
Can I ask Tim a question?
yes.
Tim, when this was conditional...
Yeah, Scott's going to speak first.
Sorry, yes, go ahead.
I wasn't here March 2nd, so when this was approved...
Accepted.
Accepted.
It's
sorry.
accepted as complete.
But was it accepted based on the fact that they did say at that point that it wasn't going to be wells, that it would be?
Acceptance of the application simply means that they've met all the requirements from the checklist to have a complete
Yeah, there was no commitment toward doing anything with
Understood.
The plan.
I might have been misinformed. Those lots are full-size lots that don't require anything exceptional? I mean, I thought that when they were clustered, they were less than the full size.
These are clustered.
These are half-acre lots.
Yeah,
They're half-acre, which normally you'd require 1 acre
1
with
acre.
150 feet of frontage.
So there's open space that makes up for the...
Exactly. No, I understand that, but,
Yeah.
so he can't really do that
Yes.
unless...
Yes, he could. They would still have sufficient land area to do a conservation subdivision on a smaller scale within the residential area that would remain.
Okay, and the conservation subdivision, does it require town utilities of
It
all kinds?
requires, the options are, you can do private well and septic, and you have to meet soil-based lot sizes. You can do private sewer and public water, which is half-acre, or you can do private sewer and well, which is a half-acre. So there's two of the lot scenarios that
Okay,
allows
so
town
what's
to have
allowing them to be less than a regular lot is
Correct.
the fact that it's under the...
part of a conservation subdivision.
Thank you.
Okay. Ready for a motion? I'll accept whatever the board wants.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we continue this until the May
11th.
May 11th planning board meeting.
Second?
Okay, the motion, second by Lynn. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions, shows affirmative. And this subdivision plan is continued to May 11th, 7 p.m., right here.
It's the only
And
notice.
as far as the
Thank you for
public,
your
this
time.
is, yeah, you're welcome. As far as the public is concerned, this is your only notice on the continuance. By statute. Okay.
Who's getting the water?
We'll take a 5-minute break.
Who's getting the water expert? Us.
Us.
Okay.
Yeah, us. Us.
And who's paying for it? Them? Oh, yeah.
And we can require that. We can
Okay.
require any expert we want to do the hiring, they do the paying.
Okay.
Perfectly legal.
Fine.
I've got...
We could. I think we,
What I've got for you is I've got the Levittown.
rather have a threat.
I've got the picture there.
Now, can you tell me by looking at that?
Photograph. I mean, it had everything.
It's right there.
That's,
It's from an aerial photograph. It's actually not part of Kentwoods. It's actually part of a different development in that area.
But it's a high density.
It is, yes.
Yeah, so it is a photograph.
Yes, it is.
Because I went in on it, I thought, man, this
Nope, that's actual development.
I don't.
yeah, that little, well, this is not mine, this is what he was sending.
Yeah.
Somebody thinks that
I know you were actually shut me down more, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk.
I hope not.
You look like you had something to say.
You're welcome.
Something might help me out up here, you know?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. You've always been a fair man, I'm gonna say that about you.
Yeah.
Take care, Chuck.
tired. Can we wrap this up?
Been there a couple times, and both times
Pick up, Betty. This is Chuck telling Betty to pick up.
Bancroft the other day, I think, running along, being very healthy. I think it was you anyway. Would you have been running on Bancroft?
Famous speech, the only part I can remember is of
Stonehenge, maybe.
must have been a political speech. They said it's right
Around there.
thespian.
Yeah, that was probably it. Oh. It's very good. I walk my dog. Where's map 2, lot 27? This 3-lot subdivision, do you know?
This is up on the Hudson Londonderry line on 102.
Is this where that church was going to go at one point? A couple years ago, we had a...
Used to be a mobile home park. I haven't been there in a while.
Okay.
It's right behind Breeze Ferry.
Yeah, okay. That looks nice. I drove by that the other day. They did a good job. That set up.
We bought one of their sheds.
Did you know?
It's a great shed.
You know what? Are the other ones full? Yes. Oh, yeah? Well, there you go. There's a cell tower right in the middle of this. It's funny to smell smoke. I don't know anybody who smokes anymore.
I've just been on wells before.
Didn't I ask for
Put little refrigerators here.
You can always go into toilet. If you ever need your code for the door, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
25 minutes from now.
It's not a real rocket science. Said yes to, let's have a continuance at least 20 minutes.
Oh, I know, God.
Sometimes you just gotta kick me. They sent me up, do you believe it?
Throwing me under the bus, giving me...
Yeah, there you go.
He'll get faster.
I remember.
We got
I didn't even realize they went to the wells. I remember they said water.
Good night, guys. Must be so happy to always be that.
Libby, we're gonna need to wait.
Okay, we're back in session.
It's the Joey show.
We'll let Andre finish up there.
We also are missing Libby as well. Libby.
Okay. Okay, we go to our next item, which is a conceptual discussion involving tax map 2, lot 27. Oh yeah, Libby's here. We can actually start. This is a 3-lot subdivision, 94-unit elderly housing development. And being a conceptual discussion, it's just conceptual. And there's nothing really binding. And we're here to exchange ideas. So, identify yourselves for our record, please.
Good evening. My name's Joseph Maynard. I'm from Benchmark Engineering. I have with me John Kalinzakis from Hickory Woods Development. The piece of property in question is up off of Route 102. It's a large tract of land. There's actually 2 parcels involved, map 227 and map 227-1. The property has an existing cell tower now that was approved by the planning board. I'd have to say close to 10 years ago now. It's a 180-foot pole at the top of the hill in that location. This piece of land, it's approximately 67.5 acres when you combine the 2 pieces, with an underlying zone of C2 with a performance overlay district on top of it. The property's been for sale for a lot of years, and actually our office had been involved with a project on it about 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, to do a senior housing development on the rear side of this down off of West Road, incorporating 3 different apartment type units. With the economy, that has kind of gone away, and Hickory Woods is looking to purchase the rear portion of the site to do a senior housing development on this land. In doing so, we'll be looking to actually subdivide the property into 3 separate lots. What we're looking to do is create 2 commercial lots that'll have direct frontage on 102. One of the lots will be approximately 3 acres in size. The other one is just under 7 acres in size. A new road will be constructed, what we've named Tavern Hill Road, where it comes in off of 102. I met with Mr. Trottier out at the site. We discussed the location of that road and how we'd like to try and keep it directly across from the Avery Road location. That creates one difficulty with the creation of the 3-acre lot under the Performance Overlay District. There's a requirement to have 300 feet of minimum frontage on the major road, whereas that lot has only approximately 224 feet of frontage. But again, it's a situation where it is the best or optimal location for a proposed entranceway to actually come into the property. The second lot of 7 acres in size, again, that one has ample frontage. It's approximately 650 feet of frontage that would be remaining on Route 102. The new road that we'd be bringing into the site will do a couple of things. It'll provide the minimum 50 feet of frontage up off of 102, but also that property has ample frontage down off of West Road. As part of this development, we're looking to create an internal road system that actually kind of circumvents the site and kind of works with the grades to get from 102 out to West Road for the private development that'll be put in for the 94 senior housing units. The units themselves that we're proposing back there will be detached units with on-site septic systems. We're in negotiations right now with the town of Hudson to actually extend water up 102 to bring water through Pennachuck into the property to service it. The other amenity that would be proposed with the senior housing portion, we're looking to create a clubhouse similar to something like what the Nevins has without the pool, but it'll be like a community hall for the 94 homes that we were creating. In addition to that, this property has a leg that goes out towards the Nessing Keg off the rear portion. At that portion of land that'll be behind the clubhouse, we're looking to create amenities for the actual senior housing development, kind of in recreational aspects. We're looking to put some tennis courts back there, some bocce courts. The plan has been revamped a little bit since this initial concept, but there will be some sort of a small netted area for driving for the golfers of the development, and we're going to create an open field area to create like a play area if people had relatives or anything else come to actually visit the property. With the existing cell tower on the site, it's a 180-foot pole, as I discussed earlier. The town zoning talks about 180 feet plus a 10-foot setback from that. We're looking to create this internal road system that actually kind of mimics the radius of that actual cell tower. We're setting our units that actually go around that area of that circle at the 200-foot mark, which leaves ample room to put some sort of a small deck and so forth off the rear of the proposed units in that area. There's a couple of other things that kind of come out of this whole thing. There's a few waivers and variances that we'll be kind of looking to move forward, and if we get a kind of a warm fuzzy out of the board, we're looking to move forward with the project. From a variance standpoint, we'll be looking to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment to talk to them about getting the phasing of the project. Under current phasing, I think it's 15 units that we'd be allowed right now. The developer would like to be able to do 25 units at a time instead of being capped at that 15.
Just a note before Joe goes much further on that. When in a situation for the elderly housing development, we do allow an exemption to the phasing ordinance, provided that both or all occupants within the development are 55 years of age or older, and an agreement is filed and recorded at the Registry of Deeds. My understanding is that the applicant is not looking to do that type of development, but would be looking to do something similar to what the Nevins ended up doing, which was restricting occupancy to nobody under the age of 22, which is the last year that the town is responsible for public school education for those people in those units, and they were able to obtain a variance to the phasing requirements of 15 units per year. So I would expect that something similar would probably be attempted here, rather than the 100% 55 and older, which would have allowed for a complete exemption to phasing.
Correct. That is one of the other, that was my next thing on here that we were going to be talking about. That will be, I guess that's a variance route that we need to seek for that. Another one of the aspects of the variance for this is that, again, with the way that the radius, we're incorporating the road system around that actual radius. Comcast Communications has a building that's up in that corner of the site. At that location, we're supposed to maintain a 50-foot buffer to Comcast, but with the radius of the cell tower, the unit, the 40-foot setback to the internal road system, the right-of-way width for the road, will actually be encroaching into that 50-foot setback with the road itself. That'll be one of the other variants that we'll be looking to seek relief from. But I think that this this road and this layout that we've actually come up with has a very, it flows well with the property, it works well with all of the grades within the site, it gives good connectivity for the actual units throughout the entire property. Another one of the variants, again, being that it is in the Performance Overlay District, as I had mentioned earlier, there is that 3-acre lot on Route 102 that will have less than the 300 feet of frontage on the road, but being that it is a situation that we're trying to maintain the continuity with Avery Road across the street, I think that that'll be a variance that I could receive once we apply for that. A couple other things, just as we go through this, we'll be looking to try and work with the board on some waivers to the planning board regulations. One of the waivers we're looking for is to actually the recreational impact fees. As I discussed earlier, this project will be a senior housing development, and the developer is looking to create a large amount of on-site recreational facilities for the residences of this development. The second aspect of this, again, deals with school impact fees, and it's my understanding that if we stayed 55 and older, that's been a pretty standard thing, but the developer in this case is also willing, no school-age children as part of this project. 22 would be the cap if we do receive that variance. We'd be back before the board to talk about asking for a waiver for school impact fees. Another one of the ones, and I spoke to staff about this, we need to pull some plans, I guess, to look at what the Route 102 corridor study showed for improvements to Route 102 in front of this house, in front of this land. At this time, the commercial lots will not be developed, but we're looking at the senior housing component to this. The senior housing component will generate approximately 25 trips in a PM peak, and we're not quite sure with the senior component what we may be required to do as an off-site improvement to Route 102 in that area. But I guess if it's something that does mimic what's in the corridor study to happen to 102 in that area, it may be something that we could potentially ask for an impact fee waiver to that portion.
It's not a waiver, it's a credit.
It's a credit, okay, sorry.
That's with the town council, not the planning board.
Okay. Another waiver to the planning board, there are 2 cul-de-sacs that we're actually proposing on this. The cul-de-sac lengths themselves are just under 300 feet from their closest intersection. In this case in particular, what we're trying to do is keep an internal road system instead of trying to do some sort of a small private drive into the actual clusters of units. I've spoken to staff about this. They seem somewhat receptive to it. I figured I'd bring it up to the board just as, you know, the items that we're looking to try and move forward with this. These are kind of big ticket things that it could potentially change the whole concept of the proposal. That pretty much covers the items that we're looking for at this time. We're looking to discuss this and see which direction to make sure we head in the right and proper direction with this.
Okay, Andre, I'll start with you.
One of the waivers that they were looking for, or potential waiver, it was for the recreational impact fee. And one of the items that usually comes up when that request is made is that, you know, what are they going to provide on site that would not make them want to go down the street to the West Road recreational area, which obviously their fee supports. And the response was, you know, to provide some of those amenities on site to reduce that likelihood. And I believe that the applicant is going to be providing for those visits from the grandkids and so on and so forth, to have facilities on site for that, you know, for that use. So,
Are there any specifics of what there is for recreation on this site?
As I discussed, in the area up in the corner that Tim's highlighting on the plan, we're actually proposing, there is a clubhouse, so it'll have inside amenities within the clubhouse itself, but we're proposing a tennis court, some bocce courts, a small driver range associated with it, and there's going to be a large field area that'll be just a big flat play area at the rear of, in that whole little compound behind the clubhouse. So we're trying to keep that within it. The other thing, too, is within this development, there'll be a very large, like, walking network, just being the roads themselves. We're talking about doing some sort of a sidewalk system throughout the project. And, you know, there's over a mile of road system throughout this whole connected atmosphere from West Road back out to 102.
Yeah, well, I think some of the things that we were talking about in our meeting were the field is what I've, the field, the open field is what I was looking at, and was even some talk about maybe some a swing set or some play area. The driving range, I don't know if an 8-year-old or 5-year-old is going to use that too much, but that field is something that I think, and again, it's one of those things that we look at is that, what amenities will they provide on site that if the kids were going to be brought there or to visit, are there amenities there that will not have them go down the street to the rest field, which obviously is supported by a recreational fee. If they have those amenities on site to such a degree, will obviously reduce or eliminate that need to use the West Field then, or other recreational fields in town, then there's something that at least the board will have something to think about when it looks at that impact fee.
And there's discretion within the board's purview in those waiver situations where you can grant a complete waiver, a partial waiver. There's some flexibility in the board as you determine the benefit provided by the recreational facilities provided on this particular project versus the need to support the existing public recreational facility. So the board will have to consider that if a waiver request came in. It's not something that's all or nothing. There is the ability of the board to waive a percentage or a portion of that fee if they so find justification to do so.
I think it will be between what's being provided, that's specific, with what other options there are in town that could be used also.
We understand that, and again, Mr. Kalinzakis here, he's been involved actively with the Devons and Sugar Plum and some of the other senior developments in town. And actually what we're really finding with the seniors that live in these developments is more, they move to these developments to be closer to their kids and their family that live in town. So I can't say that they won't show up to watch their own kid or grandchild play at one of these other sporting areas, but they're in town and they don't themselves use the facilities, but they may go to visit relatives that are in the community themselves at those facilities. The majority of them stay within the compound themselves for recreational type of things. So,
Andre?
That's all I had with regard to that. As far as the off-site impact fee and whether or not the credit or not is given there, it really remains to be seen as to what DOT would say with regard to that and what the warrants would trigger with regard to improvements to that section of the roadway and whether or not those improvements are consistent with our off-site improvement fee. And I quite honestly, as far as the internal cul-de-sacs, I got to admit, I didn't pay too much because the questions we were talking about at the time were really centered around the off-site improvement fee and also the fact that you were going to be bringing up water from Hudson and what things that could be done in order to reduce that cost. So the internal roadway network, I just think the applicant just needs to pay particular attention as to why the reduction in the cul-de-sac is there. If there's something that warrants it, much like the case was made with the 50-foot buffer, the fact that there is a radius that you have to be maintained with regard to the tower, whatever. Boy, I think the board could look at that and say, oh, all right, there's some justification, but just make sure that same justification is there for the cul-de-sacs falling within our minimum.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything, John?
Yeah, again, I'll beat Joe up on drainage if and when the time comes. So I think one of the other items that we had discussed with staff as well as the applicant was, again, one of the arrangements was our concern about through traffic from using this development as a cut through from 102 to West Road. So just throwing it out there so that the board members can look at what they have proposed. I think staff feels, again, this is more serpentine. It'll
There's stop conditions within it. It's not a direct shot from here to...
It's an obstacle course.
Yeah, it's more unlikely that people are going to use this as a cut-through, in our opinion. Joe, again, roads are to be constructed at town standards.
Town standards,
And
24 feet wide.
Yeah, and they are private roads.
as part of the ordinance says they are private.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, and I would agree with Andre, I don't remember the discussion at all about those cul-de-sacs being less than 300 feet.
450 is the minimum.
450 is the minimum. They're like, one's 285 and the other one is just a little bit more than that.
Yeah, so again, I think when I look at those, again, I kind of think of some of the other developments we have here in town, Parish Hills, Forest Hills, again, where they have this type of arrangement with again, it's almost a common drive to service all those homes, so, again, it's just
And
one of those
private
that's...
road structure instead of, but it does fall under site plan or subdivision for that portion of it.
Correct, yep. So, and that's all I had.
Okay, thanks. Tim?
I think Andre and John hit most of the highlights, just in terms of the various variance requests, particularly related to the frontage for the lot on Route 102 for the Performance Overlay District. Because it is POD, it does require 300 feet of frontage on the arterial road, and from a safety standpoint, the intersection is in the absolute best location it can be, directly across Mavie Road. So if this road would be shifted to meet the frontage requirement for both lots, because there is sufficient frontage to have 300 for each lot, but we would be supportive from a safety standpoint to support a variance if the board is so inclined to support that variance of the zoning board, given the safety aspects of making sure that that intersection is properly aligned with Avery Road. I think we hit the cul-de-sac, the cut-through was one of my initial major concerns when I heard that there was looking at proposal through this particular property, but I do think the cell tower makes for a natural impediment to that, given the requirements for the setbacks and the radius that's required there. The fact that the road coming off of West Road actually goes into the cul-de-sac is the main through movement, and it's a stop condition on the Black Forest Road. Again, I think all of these stops and turns will really discourage people from using this as a cut-through once they've tried it once. From a general overall standpoint, it will be the elderly housing is a permitted use within the Performance Overlay District. There is no variance or rezoning required for that to take place. They are allowed to utilize the requirements of our elderly housing ordinance for elderly housing within the POD. So unlike the previous projects that have come through for this particular property, there will not be a need for a rezoning application being brought forth to the planning board. And I think, as usual, when we get to the nitty-gritty of an actual application, we'll hammer home on the traffic, the lighting, the landscaping, all the things that we do in all these types of projects. So that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Tim. I'll go through the board. Scott?
I don't have any questions at that point. I think it's a good use of what's there for land.
Rick?
Nothing further to add. No, I'm fine.
Dana?
Question, looking at your drawing here, there's several units that have 42 by 50 marked on them.
Yes.
Are they bigger or smaller than the other units?
They're smaller than the other ones, being that we had setback requirements for those units. So the other units, it's an outline that's shown, it's a unit that they've built and sold in the past, but there are a couple of spots where we had to modify the shape or size of it in order to meet the setbacks or the grades.
I'm just curious as to what they were.
Yep.
And I'm assuming that future development of the two commercial sites, all entrance and egress will be off of the new road?
Per the Performance Overlay District, they're required to utilize the new road, and being that it's a private road, there will be cross agreements between the two developments to allow that.
Okay. No, looks good.
I'm all set.
Yeah, so,
Just a question again on the age restrictions, Tim, if you could just kind of refresh my memory. We started talking about the phasing.
Yeah, there's two different types of elderly housing that we have in Londonderry. There's 55 plus, which is the standard elderly housing development that we've seen developed in many different places here in Londonderry. The other type of elderly housing is the 62 plus, which is by federal and state law required that all occupants be at that age level or greater. In our ordinance, we basically segregate those into what we consider our affordable elderly housing category. So any affordable elderly housing projects are required to be the 62 plus. In the ordinance, by federal and state law, the requirements in fair housing law is that for an elderly housing project of 55 plus, you're allowed to have 80% of the units with at least one occupant 55 years of age or older. The other occupant is not restricted. 20% of those units could be any age. There's no requirement in the federal or state fair housing law requiring that those be anybody over the age of 55. What Londonderry has done in the past is, in order to gain exemptions from our phasing ordinance and be eligible for waiver for school impact fee, we've required that they sign an agreement and record that agreement that all occupants be at least 55 years of age or older, so that we don't have the impact of the schools, and we don't have, and basically as an incentive that they would not be required to have the mandatory phasing. The Nevins, as they mentioned, did not want to have that restriction of 100% 55 plus. They went the variance route and were successful, and it appears that's the direction that this applicant would be taking.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Okay. Laura?
So these are 2,000 square foot plus homes, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms?
They're all 2 bedrooms per the ordinance.
Oh, okay, sorry. And so they can be any age over 22 living in the houses?
Well, we're looking to put a restriction on that, actually, on our own behalf, to go by the federal standards. We can do we'd like to get one occupant, 55 and older, with the 80-20 split requirement.
Okay.
But, you know, we're willing to put a restriction in our own documents if we receive the variance to allow that, to actually not allow anybody under 22 years of age.
So in practice, just let's say a 55-year-old with a 30-year-old wife, whatever, moves in there and, hello, surprise, they have twins. What is to stop anybody from doing that? What is the...
Hello, surprise.
I mean, but really, if they move in and they're childless, what happens a month down the road, 2 months down the road?
You know, I'm not a specialist on the federal ordinance or the application for that purpose, but do you have any insight to that?
It could happen now. At the Nevins, we have this restriction now. We have one person, 55, so they could come in with a 30-year-old spouse and have kids, but I don't think it's a practical thing that happens. So what would happen legally if that does go on? I don't know. I guess they wouldn't be allowed to reside there, and there'd be some sort of action that would have to be taken.
And do you know if is there a homeowners association, or is this all there is? So it would be that would be the body that would be responsible for policing itself.
This question seems to come up any time we have one of these type of split developments. I've heard this question at least 10 times.
Sometimes they're a little younger, though.
Yeah.
It could happen, and the
But yeah,
question
it is an
do?
issue that's been brought up before, and ultimately, it's a self-reporting issue that one of the neighbors would have to report it to the appropriate person, and then action would have to be taken per the requirements of the ordinance.
But actually, more likely, there's a scenario in which, and I have seen actually cases around the country where this has occurred, where something has happened to, where the grandchildren have to move in, and then the homeowners association, in my recollection of the scenarios, basically kicks in and they discuss it as necessary.
It's probably a hard thing to do, you know.
Elderly housing is one of the only forms of housing discrimination that's legal in this country.
Lisa? Anyone from the public has any comment on this? Workshops usually we don't, but I do like it, so. I mean, it is quite an obstacle course through there, which I see the intent of it. I just look at all those cul-de-sacs and the maintenance, especially snow removal and stuff like that. But I'm sure the homeowners association will be capable of prompt action and so forth, keep the residents happy. And as long as the roads are to town spec. And I think probably one of the things is just the details of what the recreation, what you can offer versus what's, and that'll come at site plan time. Any questions of us?
No, we're looking just for some favorable input to move forward. You know, it's a huge expenditure on my client's part, you know, without a warm fuzzy, but I'm hearing positive comments towards this project moving forward in this capacity, so to say.
But I'd say it's probably, you know, there's probably more desirability for it to happen than not happen.
Yes.
And still well within even though we have a lot of 55 and older housing, we do have a cap.
I haven't evaluated our cap versus the new census numbers yet, because I don't think I've seen the demographic numbers come out quite yet.
Yeah, because we're at 2000, and the 2000 census, we're at 13%.
13%.
And my guess is that they're going to go up as the baby boomer demographic makes its way towards retirement.
We
I don't mean
had,
that as a joke. I mean, that is happening.
Some of it, I think, comes down to
and we did have room
affordability.
under the 13% cap. Is basically the way the cap works is whatever the percentage of those residents in town 55 or older, that same percentage of housing units is allowed to be for elderly housing. Beyond that cap, we don't permit any additional, and we had room under that cap.
Yeah, I think we're like
previously.
11%.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And we had, at one
55 and
time, we
older.
had 475 units approved for age restricted, but some of those didn't move forward, like one or more states did not move forward, and
It's still technically there.
It's still,
and
yeah,
Cedar
still
Mills.
books.
Cider Mill is gone, that one's.
Gone, and so, and those are all counted towards that 475 figure, so.
Yep. So 55 and older will be increasing, and the school-age population is decreasing. Probably not the healthiest situation. But